The famous clips that are horrifying once you know the backstory. My mum and I recently watched one of those 2020 shows where they were talking about a woman who went out drinking one night and was just never seen again. She had gone back to one guy's apartment, but hotel footage showed her leave shortly after arriving, and the guy in the apartment swore he didn't do anything. But they kept interviewing this one guy, who was the last guy to see her alive. They'd stopped at a gas station, and he claims that she started talking to another guy, got in his car and left. He played the whole, "if only I'd known, I wouldn't have let her go" kind of act with tears and everything. Well, there's footage of him at his job a couple of days later, and the footage is really generic. He has a cooler on a rolling cart and he's putting it in a freezer. He works for a food production company. When the police interviewed his boss, they asked to see all of the footage and she obliged. When they got to that part of the footage, him putting the cooler in the freezer, she told the police to stop. She said that those coolers were used to store granola bars and there was zero reason for those bars to be put in the freezer. The body was in there. He took it back and burned basically everything in a barrel down the alley a couple of days later, but it was before the police had seen the footage, and he'd bleached his entire van before police could search it. The surveillance video of Timothy Pitson. It looks like just he and his mother are checking into a hotel, but in reality it's shortly before his mother ends herself and leaves behind a note saying that Timothy is safe with a new family now, but he'll never be found. He's still missing. The song Anne-Marie sings in All Dogs Go to Heaven about wanting a loving home. While recording, the voice actress, Judith Barcy, kept crying. Her home life was awful. Her father was mistreating both her and her mother, and they were afraid for their lives. Judith did not live to see the movie's release. What about the video that was on Tosh.0 where there were two girls and the dad tied them in a playful way to the bed? There was a really creepy tone and it was like a tutorial on how to be a creep so that people could do what they wanted. Tosh said on the show that it was creepy and the guy's whole YouTube channel was really weird. A few months later, the FBI or something investigated it, and it turned out the guy was, well, exactly what you'd expect. The dating game. The concept appeared innocent enough. A woman chooses a bachelor out of the 3 available contestants, and they go on a date. However, the game in 1978 turned dark when serial killer Rodney Alcala was nominated to be a contestant and actually won the game. The contestant refused to go out with him on the date because she thought he was actually creepy afterwards. She dodged a bullet. Probably quite literally, I suppose. I mean, I guess it's a pleasant surprise to me that people on that show could turn down their dates. I just have to wonder what sort of measures they might have put in place to actually legally compel people to do so after this incident, or if they just withheld any money that was normally on the line for the show or something. In any case, way to go with your gut, lady. Ian Huntley. That guy unalived 2 people and gave an interview to the news while they were missing. One day I saw a news report on a woman's body dropped in a lake. The police were still looking for the body. They interviewed a man who said, "Oh my god, that could have been someone's mother." A few hours later, they found out that the body was in fact that man's mother. I'm from the Czech Republic, and on YouTube there's a video of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire contender Victor Kalivoda. He's a pretty smart guy and performs better than well. However, later he becomes one of the most famous mass unalivers in the history of our country. That Who Wants to Be a Millionaire video always gives me goosebumps. Oof, that one Reddit thread. Redditors take a picture of them on a hike, and in the background there's the unconscious body of a person who was severely injured the night before. The 2004 Tsunami videos. People having fun on a gorgeous day, enjoying the now very wide beach, not knowing the wave of death is coming towards them. When the 2011 tsunami hit, I was in high school. Taking mostly computer classes, I can't tell you how many videos I watched of CCTV, live streaming and stuff. Videos of cars being washed away, buildings full of people being inundated with water, even one video where you see people rushing up a hill. There's this elderly couple who can't keep up and it honestly seems as if they just give up. I'm fairly certain they get washed away. That day was tragic. The video of former officer Craig Payer giving safety advice that was created in response to the murder of Karen Knott. In reality, Payer had killed Knott by luring her to an isolated area just off the freeway. Carmen Miranda's last performance. Carmen Miranda, the famous singer and dancer of the 1940s, performed on The Jimmy Durante Show on August 4, 1955. At the end of her performance, she briefly dropped to her knee, but propped back up afterwards. She later died of a massive heart attack that same night. The interview about a murder with Stephen McDaniel in which he, her neighbor, ended up being the one who kidnapped and dismembered her. It's horrifying looking back and seeing his tics where they bring her up, and even when they eventually find her body and he goes loco. That one video of the Russian influencer, in her birthday party at a swimming pool, she had the idea of pouring dry ice into the water for the visual effect. 3 people died intoxicated because of all the carbon dioxide. I believe one of those who lost their life was her husband. I don't know about innocent, but if you cut out the ending, the video leading up to Bud Dwyer's self-deletion just seems so normal. Just another guy on TV getting hounded by reporters over the latest controversy. If it had cut there, you could just air it on the evening news and nobody would know that someone had died less than 20 seconds later. It's just disturbing. I don't know if you're aware, but there are actually 2 videos from different vantage points. The first has a pretty horrible amount of blood. The second is, I'm sure, the one you're talking about, where it's like, I can't believe that much blood can even fit in a human body. There was a celebrity in the UK called Jimmy Savile who presented many BBC programs in the 1970s, especially ones with a younger audience. He did a campaign for seatbelt awareness and was a patron for so many charities for the vulnerable. He was probably the most loved celebrity for decades. After his death, it was revealed that he was, well, basically one of the worst people you've ever heard of. He did a number of things that we can't talk about on YouTube, but what we can say is that after seeing it, every piece of footage of him with a younger person takes on a new, sinister aspect. Actress Melissa Benoist was on Jimmy Fallon in 2016. She told a story about a time she fell and tore up half of her face and one of her eyes. She made jokes about it, and nobody really thought about it. Last year, she revealed that one of her exes was very violent when they were together. She revealed that the story she told on Jimmy Fallon was a cover-up story. The real story is that her husband, at the time, had thrown an iPhone in her face. It's creepy knowing that said ex was almost definitely Blake Jenner, who she starred in Glee with. I can't bear to rewatch any of the season his character is in. It creeps me out too much. That set must have been hell for her as well, what with Lea Michele also hating her. This video of a band performing in a bar in Thailand. Minutes later, the entire place caught fire and more than 60 people were dead. Also, the band's name is Burn, and the song they're singing is Linkin Park's In the End. That is some Final Destination crap right there. Dr. Nassar's sports medicine videos. He's one of the doctors for USA Gymnastics, and he's had a ton of videos on his website of him demonstrating various sports med techniques and treatments. It looks professional on the surface. The thing is, some of his techniques are totally made up. Some of the techniques he demonstrated on video, well, again, let's just say that we can't talk about them on YouTube, but they involve very inappropriate behavior with people of a younger age. He's demonstrating supposed healing techniques on hundreds of younger people under the guise of it being for their health, and sometimes directly in front of their parents. And looking back, you can tell he's really getting something out of it. Watch AmITheA on Netflix if you want the story of this scumbag, although I can't think why you would. Maybe not that innocent to begin with, but it's extra creepy knowing the truth. There's a video of an African grey parrot named Bud saying, "Don't frickin' shoot!" He witnessed his owner, Martin Durham, being murdered by his wife. If I recall correctly, Bud had also mimicked both sides of the verbal fights, alternating between a male and female voice. I believe the parrot testified in court and the wife was convicted. Okay, to clarify, I've looked it up, and Bud didn't formally get sworn in as a witness in court. Sorry to get your hopes up. He was, however, a useful witness during the investigation. The video of Alessandro Moreschi, who was a castrato singer. That video was him singing Ave Maria in 1902. I believe he was in his 40s. If you don't know what a castrato is, basically they used to be really popular to use in opera and other genres of music way back a few centuries ago, mostly to use in the place of female singers. A castrato is a male singer who's been castrated before puberty. Basically, if a young boy had a high enough voice in a choir or something along those lines, they would have a procedure while they were still young so they wouldn't lose their abilities to reach the high pitches because their voices wouldn't drop due to puberty. Honestly, the recording completely creeps me out because it was such an awful thing in the history of opera, and it's so creepy that only a little under 100 years ago did the last official castrato die. Thousands of people didn't survive the procedure, or they died due to complications not long after, and this recording is absolutely haunting as a result. Tommy Cooper's death on stage. People were thinking he was still acting when he collapsed on the ground dead from a heart attack. Tommy was a brilliant performer who was deliberately amateurish and had things go wrong as part of his routine. So when he died, many people thought it was part of the show. The narrator has always mused over the fact that this could happen in the show that goes wrong or the play that goes wrong. If you haven't seen the play that goes wrong, Google it. I'll wait right here. It's a spectacular feat of choreography about a play where everything that could go wrong on stage happens. It's part of the show. It's done so well that I'm not sure that any of the audience would realize if one of them actually had a terrible accident on stage. Chris Watts pleading for the return of his family. He confessed to being the enactor of their demise the following week. Fetch, with Ruff Ruffman, is a fairly obscure PBS kids show that I liked to watch as a kid. The episode Ruff Pigs Out and Has a Whale of a Time features orca trainer Dawn Branshaw, who was unfortunately killed by an orca 5 months after the episode aired. Fire at a nursing home in Sydney back in 2011. TV reporter interviews one of the nurses, Roger Dean, who tells of helping to get residents out of the burning building. Then the police announce he was the one who set the fire to start with to try to cover up his theft of $85 worth of prescription meds. 11 people died in that fire. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? In 2016, YouTuber Brittany Louise Taylor uploaded a video titled, "I'm Engaged and Pregnant." She talks about a man she'd met on Tinder and that she was now bearing a child. After the baby was born, it emerged that this man was never in love with her but was just pretending. He'd had her targeted for human trafficking and had deliberately got her pregnant in order to sell her baby. With that information, it's really scary how he looks at her at the end of the video and how he treats her in other clips on her YouTube channel. Fortunately, she escaped the situation and got a restraining order. The scariest thing about this is that he didn't go to prison, and he went on to impregnate and marry another Instagrammer who has since disappeared from social media. Be careful who you swipe right with, kids. If you want to find out more about the story, Brittany has a book called A Sucky Love Story. It's badly written, but it is fascinating. And I should clarify, her son is also safe. They live with her mother in Arizona. If I recall correctly, WWE did a in memoriam with Chris Benoit very soon after he died. A little too soon, before it was announced that Benoit also ended his family before himself. The movie Blow Up is basically this concept, but a movie. It's about a guy who takes a picture of a woman at a park, and that woman demands that picture. She follows him around. She seduces him, makes him think she loves him. Then she takes the picture and leaves. But he kept a copy. He blows it up so big it takes up an entire wall. And then he finally sees what she was doing in those bushes. He goes to find the bushes afterwards and finds the dead body she was hiding when he took her picture. A popular 18-year-old CSGO YouTuber uploaded a reveal of the supercar he'd just bought. His Steam account, containing around 100,000 of in-game items, was then banned 6 months later. It was tied to the gambling websites. When everything was removed, he and many others were trade banned. Like they could still play, but they couldn't trade items. Those websites were a scam too. So anyway, this ended up causing him to have a serious mental breakdown. 2 months after his ban, he drove his car 100 miles per hour down a San Diego highway the wrong way in an attempt to end things. He crashed head-on into a van, not only fulfilling his wish, but taking out an innocent family in the process. The last Twitch stream of Wreckful. He jokingly comments about what if it's all a simulation and maybe you get out when you die. He asks if he should try his luck to his chat. You can tell he's glancing at his balcony a few times. He jumped sometime later. It gets even darker when you learn about his past. His older brother also tragically ended things for himself as well. The 2020 Britney Spears TikToks and all the videos she posted. I'm not a fan myself, to be honest, but as a person who doesn't know much about her, it felt weird and somewhat awkward to watch it. Then I read the comments to see that there are people saying like how she's asking for help all through these videos. Curb Your Enthusiasm were filming in Dodger Stadium during a live match. If they hadn't been there, a man called Juan Catalan would have gone to death row for murder. The cameras caught footage of him sitting in his seat and he was exonerated. There's a Netflix documentary on it called Long Shot. The video of the Boston Marathon bomber going to a supermarket to casually buy milk after blowing up 2 homemade bombs at the race. F that guy. Years ago I was running and a guy caught up with me. He told me he'd been following for a couple of miles and was hoping I'd keep him company for a bit. He then proceeded to tell me that his wife had done the Boston Marathon and they'd heard the explosions from a few blocks away and thought they were fireworks and cheered. He'd asked me to run with him for a while because he was dwelling on it that day and needed to talk to someone. His wife had been avoiding running and he wasn't used to running alone. Normally I get creeped out by people who talk to me while I'm running, but he was just a sad guy with PTSD. I felt bad telling him that the bombing had taken place the day after my wedding, and we were on a boat tour in Hawaii and learned about it when it started to rain and we were taking shelter, and my husband checked his phone and saw the news about the bombing. How about the episode of The Cosby Show when he makes his secret barbecue sauce and everyone gets really groggy and tired, and he tries getting it on with his wife? This video from June of 2012 showing a 20-year-old man playing Dance Dance Revolution at an AMC theater in Connecticut. He's being unknowingly recorded from behind by some people who spotted him, and they're both mocking him and admiring his skills at the game. 6 months after that video was taken, the young man in the video, Adam Lanza, would unalive his mother. He'd then drive his car to the nearby school where yet another of America's greatest firearm-related tragedies would occur. No motive for the event was ever found. Mother Love by Queen. Freddie got most of the song recorded, but Brian has the last verse. At the studio, Freddie said he was tired and he'd finish the rest some other time. He never did. He was resting at home during his final days. Brian came back later after Freddie's death and finished the last bit. I don't know if that's haunting so much as poignant. And frankly, compared to some of the absolutely horrific stuff we've been reading about here, it's almost a nice reprieve full of camaraderie and tribute for the fallen head of your band. And to top off this story of Queen, there's this final absolutely incredible factoid. I'm also going to add The Show Must Go On. It was recorded in one take, with Freddie being gravely ill at the time of recording. He simply downed some vodka and began to record the only take. That's one of my favorite songs from Queen, not because it's Freddie singing, but because of how he was singing it. Freddie didn't even have his full singing range in it, but his emotions were so much over it that it radiates his feelings. It's a truly touching song. The Mike Philpott Press Conference. In around 2012, there was a big story here in England about Mick and Mariad Philpott. Their house had burned down and they'd lost 6 of their immediate family members. This press conference happened shortly after and shows an emotional pair thanking people for their efforts trying to save the children. Turns out Philpott was a well-known slimeball who lived off benefits, had numerous kids with different women, and was in an open marriage that only he seemed happy about and had been on TV before bragging about his life. When one of his mistresses decided she'd had enough and left, she took her kids with her. Philpott didn't like that, so he concocted a plan to set fire to his own house, rescue his kids in a feat of heroism, and frame the woman who left him so she'd lose custody of the kids. The fire got out of control way quicker than he expected, and he ended up being responsible for a truly tragic loss of life. He did that press conference knowing he was responsible. He's now serving life in prison. There's a great picture out there somewhere taken during the same press conference. It shows one of the officers assigned to the case with a look of disgust, almost like he's thinking, "We know you did it, we just can't prove it yet." The 2007 movie Waitress. It's about a small-town waitress with a passion for baking who struggles with an awful bullying husband and an unwanted pregnancy while trying to find happiness and love. It's a sweet and really heartwarming film, and it has some big-name stars: Kerry Russell, Nathan Fillion, Andy Griffith, but most notably to this point, Adrienne Shelley. Adrienne Shelley was not only a co-star and the writer for Waitress, but this movie was also her cinematic debut as a director. When it was released in 2007, it was very well received for its heart and unique directorial style. However, Adrienne Shelley was killed in 2006, 3 months before it debuted. Her death was first ruled as a self-deletion by hanging, before further investigation showed that she was murdered by a stranger who staged the whole thing. Waitress was the only film she'd get to direct. The Adrienne Shelley Foundation now exists to support women filmmakers, continuing Shelley's legacy. Honestly, typing this up is making me a bit teary. Waitress is one of my all-time favorite movies, and a great musical as well. And losing someone like Adrienne Shelley just shows how cruel the world can be sometimes. Back in the 90s, there was a segment on the Jenny Jones show where a guy, Scott Amadure, confessed that he had a crush on a male friend, Jonathan Schmitz. Schmitz was so embarrassed by the appearance that he fatally shot Amadure 3 days after the taping. That kid who did anime reviews and ended up making a video about his big future plans. He ended up ending his entire family and tried doing the same to his old high school before he got caught. Also, Elliot Rodgers' old videos are just eerie as well. Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton. It's a song written to his 4.5-year-old son who had died after falling 53 stories out of an apartment window that was accidentally left open. The videos of the leader of the Third Reich taken by Eva Braun. There's a part where he's flirting with her as she's filming him. It's cute if you know he isn't A frickin' H. The last video of the guy who made Temple OS. It's a tragic story already, but a few hours after that, he got run over by a train. A lot of people probably remember the Minecraft family, a wholesome YouTube video series in the early days of Minecraft, where a family, the son, who was the person who made the videos, his dad and sister would all play together. It was funny and a great part of my childhood. I went to rewatch the series and some comments were referring to a Draw My Life video he had made, which revealed his father was actually pretty awful to his mother and himself during those times, and that playing Minecraft was the only time his family felt normal. That broke my heart and I couldn't watch the series or see it the same way afterwards. The family movie The Adventures of Milo and Otis. It's a live-action movie about a dog and a cat. The filmmakers horribly mistreated the animals, even killed some in order to get their shot. To be honest, Homeward Bound was 10 times better and now I know why. Seriously though, if I find out they mistreated animals on the set of Homeward Bound, my entire world is over. Okay, I just looked it up and Homeward Bound seems to be just fine, you guys. We can get through this. Peanut butter jelly time. That guy was killed in a standoff with police and was Snoop Dogg's brother-in-law. Snoop Dogg even tried to de-escalate him during the incident. The video of that guy getting a strike at a bowling alley and showing it off. But he's the guy Stevie Stevens that unalived the old man on Facebook Live by doming him because his girlfriend Joy Lane broke up with him. It's pretty wild. Also, having seen that Facebook Live video around when it comes out, the second the camera flips around and it shows Stevens' face, it makes my stomach sink. It's so effed up.
Lawyers, what's a case you regretted winning? I'm a work comp attorney, now represent injured people, but used to work on other side insurance defense. There was an applicant with a serious injury, fell off a ladder, busted back with fusion, shoulder screwed. Years of treatment, internal issues, psych issues, really just messed up. 50% plus permanent disability. We were 5 years in and finally getting to settlement time. If we bought out his future medical settlement pretty far into 6 figures, this guy was the sole provider for wife and 2 kids. Then, we found out he had aggressive brain cancer. Expected only a couple of years to live at best. Thus, we wouldn't buy out future medical anymore. Still got permanent disability for $60K-ish, but can't give medical buyout based on 25-plus year life expectancy anymore. I felt terrible for the guy and his family. Me and the adjuster tried to get insurance to agree to some sort of amount like 5-year buyout, but the bean counter said hell no. The attorney knew it wasn't me making the decision. Even though he worked on that guy's file for 5+ years, he decided to take $0 in fees. I have so much respect for that attorney turning down $10K plus in fees to help his client in a very crappy situation. Yeah, I can't lie, if I were a lawyer on the other side of that, I'd probably be laying awake at night thinking about that guy and his family. And clearly this guy does. I do family law, and I represented a father who had lost most of his custody from illegal substance use and imprisonment as a result. He came to me saying he was clean and doing good and had his life together, and it checked out. He had been clean for almost 9 months, not counting jail time, and seemed sincere in wanting to resume a full relationship with his son. The other side fought viciously to keep him in extremely little custody and supervised at that, but we prevailed and got an order restoring family frequent unsupervised partial custody. Not long afterwards, only about 3 months after the case, he was back to doing illegal substances, sold most of his furniture, and for me the most soul-crushing is that he set up a fake GoFundMe stuff for his child's cancer. His child didn't have cancer and has never had cancer, so you know where that money was going. I withdrew my appearance at this point, so I don't know what happened afterwards, but I imagine and hope his custody was taken away. Basically, the net result of winning that case was that the poor boy had to witness his father relapse onto illegal substances and was exploited for money. Worst case I ever won. I work in medical malpractice defense. Once I had an obstetrician or gynecologist who burned a patient during a procedure. When I met with the doctor, he lied to me throughout the representation over 16 months, saying he had no idea how it happened. There is a doctrine in law called res ipsa, meaning absent some sort of negligence. This accident could not have occurred. Woman came in without a burn, and after the procedure, the woman left with a burn. There's no way this doctor didn't know what had happened. The area of the burn was where he was operating on. It wasn't until I brought up settlement, because this was not a case we could win, did he say, "Oh, maybe I do know what happened." We ultimately settled that case, which is considered a favorable outcome considering the potential high monetary verdict. Sometimes I think this doctor really ought to have lost that case and their license. I wouldn't say I regret this so much as to this day it amazes me. As a first-year associate, I was given a terrible PI case where my client received a flu shot and thereafter felt pain in his shoulder. He went to another doctor who performed an MRI and determined he had a torn rotator cuff, which was undoubtedly not related. My job was to allege the flu shot caused the rotator cuff tear. Our ortho actually correlated the two, which is the more regrettable position, and the case paid out. Being the bottom of the totem pole, I had no choice but to take the case, which was handed down by a partner, but at the same time, just overwhelmingly made me feel like the worst stereotyped attorney and just hated having to walk into court on it and feel my reputation being destroyed. I'm just picturing this dude walking in court and be like, "Your Honor, I feel offended because this is just so stereotypical evil lawyer. I don't want to be that guy. Is it fair that I go through years of school and training to get to this specific job only to be stereotyped so callously?" I do juvenile work, criminal law and family law. I represented this client first when he was a juvenile charged with disorderly conduct at school and fighting. Then, when he became an adult, it was for simple things like possession of the devil's lettuce. As he got older, it became easier and easier to figure out what part of his life hasn't gone as well as it could, and I tried to counsel him and push him to better himself. He got his GED, he started going to NA, he started classes at a community college and found a part-time job. On the night of his 21st birthday, he was charged with a DWI. Of course, I'll take care of that too. About 6 months later, we are due in for court for a trial on a Monday, and he doesn't show up, which at this point in his life is highly unusual. As I'm trying to figure out where he is, the court starts going over arraignments, first appearances, and then, lo and behold, 3 people are up for murder charges. The prosecution starts to tell the judge what the facts and circumstances of the case are and mentions a few victims' names. Apparently, my client was at a party when these 3 individuals decided to allegedly do a drive-by. My client suffered from multiple wounds and didn't make it to the hospital. So, by default, as you can't prosecute a dead person, the state has to take a dismissal. I guess technically a win. Either way, it was crushing to me as I thought he had really turned his life around. As a personal injury attorney, I've seen a few clients with the blue-collar lotto, or getting more money than they reasonably know how to deal with. I do my best to educate them, but my job is to try and maximize their recovery, not to teach them finance, and I have definitely contributed to a few illegal substance habits. In one of my first cases after passing the bar exam, a young man retained me on a drunk driving charge. No one was hurt, but he totaled his car. During trial, the arresting police officer testified that my client was clearly drunk at the accident scene and that my client was loudly blaming the accident on a freaking butthole who stole his car, crashed it, and then fled before the cops arrived. However, according to the 2 other witness statements tendered into evidence, it was my client's friend, the passenger, who was screaming about the butthole who stole the car, not my client, the driver. The cop must have confused the 2 men during his testimony. This discrepancy raised a reasonable doubt in the judge's mind, so she acquitted my client. At the time, the acquittal was somewhat unexpected for me. In my personal view, my client was clearly drunk and responsible for the accident, regardless of who was blaming the mystery butthole to the cops. But I was happy my client got off, no one was hurt, and lessons were learned, and I was quite euphoric to have won my first criminal case. The regret? About a month after the acquittal, my young client called me at 3 a.m. from the police station saying, "It's me again. The police arrested me for drunk driving again. Can you help me?" Not only did I answer no, I instantly regretted getting the earlier acquittal. My client apparently didn't learn any lessons. You can't save everybody, some people just can't learn a freaking lesson to save their life. I got a spoiled brat of a teenager cleared of a shoplifting charge when he absolutely had done it. His rich parents hired me to represent him. I did that to the best of my ability, and we went to trial and won, but I can't say I felt good about it. This kid needed to be taught some accountability for his actions, and his parents just wanted to buy their way out of of any trouble he got into. Had this happened to me twice. Got my client out on bail only to thereafter have him up and killed. First time he was in a building, supposedly selling, got chased by the police and a struggle ensued where he was smoked point blank in the head. Mother told me that it was my fault that he was killed and that I was working with the DA and the police. Second time, a young man no more than 16 gets released while waiting trial on robbery. One of the conditions of release was that he was to maintain a curfew. That very night, he breaks curfew, goes over to somebody else's house, and was killed in a illegal substance-related robbery. Mother blamed me and said that the devil was working through me, that we were all demons. Criminal defense is a hard business. Did a divorce where the husband, who I was representing, wanted to trade custody of his children for a set of bedroom furniture. The bedroom furniture was not even like a family heirloom. It was furniture that you could probably get at a Rooms to Go or something. Still makes me ill. That's why I got out of family law. I'm picturing that father looking up at the judge and saying, "Your Honor, I love my children with all my heart, truly, but that furniture means the world to me." I won a summary judgment motion that my firm filed not expecting to win. We had a decent argument, but odds were way worse than a coin flip, and judges don't like granting summary judgment because it's an extreme remedy. The client initially was thrilled. Case is over. We tried to break the news gently. Nope. 3 years later, we're back in the same spot we were before. We won our motion. The other side appealed it up to the state Supreme Court and won because the Supreme Court said the trial judge should have denied our motion. So, we're back at square one, north of $100,000 in illegal bills with no resolution. Maybe it'll settle, maybe it will go to trial. I'll find out in the next 3 to 4 months. The one I particularly hated happened at my first law job. This woman was a long-term client of my boss. In the past 10 years or so, she has been caught driving under the influences 8 times, violated home incarceration countless times, been caught with controlled substances a few times, and stabbed 2 people on home incarceration. My boss at the time was the master of getting people off for DUIs, so she had only been convicted of a DUI third and always managed to stay on home incarceration with whatever releases she desired. I always regretted her cases because that woman is truly a danger to the public. She's undoubtedly going to kill someone someday, but I'll be damned if she isn't the luckiest woman alive in getting away with DUIs. A little late to the party, but I've got one I still think about a lot. Worked in criminal defense, represented a guy in a DUI. He had priors, so another conviction meant time, loss of license, problems. Long story short, he was pulled over by police after they followed him leaving a bar. At trial, I elicited admission from the arresting officer that during the 2.5 miles he followed him for, he did not observe a single moving violation. No speeding, erratic driving, driving over the lines, blowing stop signs, running red lights, didn't even stop suddenly at red lights. Also got the DRE officer to testify that the accused only spoke Spanish and they couldn't get interpreter officer to the roadside to explain the field sobriety exercises, which the officer documented the accused refused to perform. Jury came back in 15 minutes. Guy was extremely grateful and his lovely family was very gracious in thanking me and our office. Feel good about the whole thing. A couple months later, I'm in county to meet with a client and I see him in one of the pods. Find out sometime after the trial, he violently and sexually assaulted his stepdaughter. I think about that one a lot. There was this case I saw that involved a claim with free shifting, meaning that if the plaintiff won, their attorney's fees would get paid by the defendant. Defendant pushed an aggressive legal position at trial that the judge agreed with and won, avoiding a few thousand in liability to the plaintiff and a few thousand in attorney fees. So far, so good. But then the plaintiff appeals all the way to the state's High Court, requiring a ton of briefing and time. High Court agrees with plaintiff, reserves and sends back to the trial court, which now enters judgment against the defendant for a few thousand in damages against the plaintiff and tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees from the appeal. The defense lawyer probably regretted winning at first on that aggressive argument to the trial court. This is honestly making me realize that court, law and order, all this crap is way more complicated than proving your client's innocence or, the other person's guilt, whatever. I mean, hell, I've always known that you can have a bent jury that are just really one-sided in their opinion on basically whatever the heck they want to feel like on any given thing, whether it be race, politics, or anything of the sort, sympathy even. God, I would hate to be a lawyer. This probably won't be the best answer, but this is a real one. After law school, I had to turn down a criminal defense job offer because my wife got a better offer somewhere else. So basically, I followed her along and was desperate to find something after 3 months of fruitless efforts. I would take just about any job that required a JD, whereas literally the only thing I ever wanted to do was criminal defense. 3 months after moving, I got an interview for a real estate litigation job. They hired me the next day. Looking back, that was probably red flag number 1. First day on the job, they taught me how to foreclose on a claim line. These are 2 things I had never heard of before. Turns out it is totally brainless work if you have the right forms. Mind-numbingly boring, basically just cutting and pasting new addresses and amounts owed. So anyways, it took me about 2 months to realize this when I had my first set of hearings. But literally my sole purpose at the firm, which represented over 100 homeowners associations, was to take people's houses away for not paying their homeowners association dues. After my first set of foreclosures, I actually slipped into a pretty legitimate depression. I was getting paid peanuts to drive nearly an hour to work every day to do work I despised on behalf of people I literally could not pretend to care about. The straw on the camel's back was when I started signing the foreclosure and realized I was that guy, you know? I understand someone has to do the work, I guess. There certainly is a lot of money to be made, but it was not for me. I did that job for 3 months, came home one Friday and told my wife I'd rather be homeless than go back on Monday. By some stroke of luck, I started a stellar criminal defense job within 2 weeks, and all of the heartache that has 100% been worth it. I've won a lot of cases. You have to redefine winning and losing when doing criminal defense, because sometimes even a particularly juicy plea is a win in my opinion, and never once felt bad about it. For example, I got a guy's plea deal cut from 60 years to 15 years for a string of robberies where the interrogations and confessions were overwhelmingly unconstitutional. Like the interrogations were textbook how not to do an interrogation, Missouri versus Siebert, and stuff like that. Never lost sleep over someone not going to jail. So yeah, every case where I took someone's house away, probably 24 times for not paying HOA fees, generally $4,000 or less, was the worst case I ever won. F HOAs. Well, that's my humble opinion. I just think lawyers are kind of scummy overall. Family law is a little different in that you never really win, per se. You may get more favorable rulings or better terms, but unless the opposing party did something illegal or mind-bogglingly stupid, it's never a decisive win, really. Although I did have a case where my client fought really hard for the dog and then ended up turning him over to a shelter. Frickin' douchebag. The ex-wife received an anonymous tip and was able to get him back quickly. Yeah, I feel like any couple that's having a messy divorce is usually like, how can I hurt them? Oh, I'll take their pet that they love and adore, and then get rid of them immediately or put them down. And it's utterly unnecessary in my opinion. I know a lawyer who had a divorce file a long time ago where she represented the husband, and the husband fought and fought and fought for this painting that the wife's mother had gifted them. It wasn't valuable or anything, but it was a gift from her deceased mother, and he would not settle without it. So she acquiesced and delivered the painting to her lawyer, who delivered it to the husband's lawyer for him to pick up. He never did. It's still sitting in the lawyer's office after years, unless she's tossed it by now. He didn't want the painting, he just didn't want her to have it. Summer of 2018, I get work regarding what seemed, from the client's description, as a pretty drawn-out and messy divorce case. The husband was my client, and he seemed very adamant that his soon-to-be ex-wife was after every penny he had. Given he seemed to have a fairly high-paying job, it seemed like a pretty common type of case. The city I work in has many instances of this. It has a high cost of living and a lot of well-paid working professionals in private industry. He was a very well-spoken, amicable guy in his late 50s, and truly seemed like he'd been taken by surprise and betrayed by his soon-to-be ex-wife. When I actually got the case, however, I was basically floored. His wife was a working professional as well, worked in government. They'd been married for over 20 years and had 2 kids together and a paid-off house. Before taxes, he made almost 3 times what she did, not counting his stock options, and yet she'd contributed equally to their mortgage on every home they'd owned over the course of the marriage. By all accounts, despite a vast difference in income, she'd carried her weight, raised 2 kids, and worked full-time during the entirety of the marriage. I live and work in Canada. She could have easily raked him over the coals in the divorce if it had gone to court. Instead, it seemed like she'd done everything she possibly could to not have him subjected to that. This divorce had been ongoing for 5 years before he hired me, and it was basically him looking a gift horse in the mouth over and over, with constant renegotiation on the contract they'd both signed initially, with him skimping on alimony and then debating on lesser terms. He was basically given an inch and tried to take a mile, dragging it out for so long that per divorce law it had to go to court. I almost suspect he did so as a way to try and drag her through the mud, though he may have genuinely been that delusional. I consider it a win only because his ex-wife was adamant about only wanting what was somewhat fair, and for it to be over because of the strain it was having on the family. Per the contract, he owed her still about $50K in back pay, but she was content with $15K, which was less than this guy made in a month. I did regret the win, though. She seemed like a very nice woman with the patience of a saint, while almost all of his anger towards her seemed to come from wounded ego. I should also note that though they had 2 kids together, both were in their 20s by the time I was hired, and custody had never been an issue at all, even for the one who had been a minor when they'd separated. It's like in The Hobbit when I guess I'll call him King Dwarf, is like, I can't remember. Wait, is it Thorin? Is it Thorin Oakshield or something like that? God, I can't remember. It's been so long. Those movies are old now. But it's like how he's like, no, the gold is mine. I won't share it with anyone or anything. And greed, man. It can ruin you. I did some custody work early in my career and won some cases, more on the merit of my trial skills than on the merit of the parents. The thing with family law work in general is that there is essentially no bar to entry. Anybody with a law degree and a pulse can get a family law practice up and running quickly because there is just an absolute glut of work. What that also means is that 75% of the lawyers practicing family law are clueless and awful. Early in my career, I certainly was clueless, but at the least, I was not awful. Therefore, in a battle between clueless and awful versus just clueless usually won. So yeah, I can't recall any specific cases, except to say that fighting over children in court is a terrible thing and basically everyone loses. I regret that entire portion of my career.
Hey Reddit, which double standard irritates you the most? The other day, I got a new iPhone from AT&T. I told the salesperson I didn't want to make any changes to my account. 2 days later, I get an email saying, "Congrats on signing up for cell phone insurance for $9.99 a month." Not once did this salesperson utter the words cell phone insurance. If I walk into an AT&T every month and steal $9.99, I would go to jail. When a salesperson steals an extra $9.99 a month from me, they call it cross-selling and don't see anything wrong with it. Work over 12 to 15 hours a day to get your project in by deadline is fine, but don't you dare show up 5 minutes late the next day. Paid based on a 40-hour week, trend towards 50 to 60 hours on average. Edit, should point out that I love the job and I feel I get paid a good rate. Just annoyed after getting called out by the sales staff who don't have to pull extended shifts. I work for a small business, 8 employees. Smokers, 4 of the 8 of us, are allowed smoke breaks whenever they feel like it. We aren't given regular coffee breaks or lunch, during which they aren't required to punch out or put anything other than, and I quote management here, a reasonable time limit on. I don't smoke, but I do like a bit of fresh air every now and then, so I go outside for 3 to 5 minutes and check my email or read the news on my phone. This is completely unacceptable to my boss because, and let me quote her directly again, "Phones are an addiction that waste company time." I asked her why smokers aren't held to the standard, and I was told, quote, "Smokers need to smoke. You don't need to read the news." A double standard imposed on me by my mother-in-law. Conversation happened earlier. Mother-in-law, if I ever catch you cheating on your wife, I'll cut you with a machete. Me, silent. Neighbor, but Mother Lily, your sons are horn dogs and have different children from different mothers. Are you going to cut them too? Mother-in-law, now why would I cut my own sons? P.S. I don't cheat on my wife. My hippie friends who believe modern medicine is evil and that chemicals are dangerous, to the point of never taking paracetamol or even believing things like vaccines are bad. Maybe I use the word friends too broadly. but they don't give a crap about snorting white powder that they've bought from a guy they barely know, which is very likely 20% actual white powder and 80% miscellaneous white powder. The irony is that most of that miscellaneous white powder is probably paracetamol. 5-minute smoke break? Sure. 5 minutes for fresh air? Screw you. Get back to work. Acknowledging the existence of children trying to interact with me. I'm a guy. Example. Was a cashier and this kid with some mental disorder, Downs I think, always loved to talk to me when his parents were going through cash. His dad said he always remembered me. Long story short, got hauled into the office by my boss and I was told my behavior was inappropriate for talking to a kid about food. Manager. You need to be a team player and help your team out. Sits in her office all day not doing jack squat. People. I want more art, music, movies, and other forms of entertainment. Also people. I don't want to pay for any of it or it isn't worth my money. Saw this one firsthand in a store once that made me laugh. Mother. All you do is waste your time playing video games. Teenage kid. You're on Facebook as much as I'm playing games. Mother. Long pause. That's different. Parent. You're wasting so much time playing those stupid video games. Followed by the parent watching TV from the moment they get home till they go to bed. This one drives me up a wall because this is what my parents like to do, specifically my mom. She doesn't do it anymore, but back when I was growing up and trying to make friends and actually interact on social spaces, she didn't understand that because it was all online that, somehow that doesn't mean anything. You have to go out and make friends. Mom, I'm making friends. Now that I have a job and make money using the internet, she doesn't yell at me, but it's that's still worth something. Mom and dad stereotype. My husband is an excellent father, but people always ask who's watching the kids when they aren't with me. Their dad? People. Oh, so he's babysitting today? Me. No, he's taking care of his freaking kids. When my political party does X messed up thing, it's okay. When yours does it, it's wrong. We won't hire you unless you have 5 years of experience working this exact job. Your uncle's cousin already works here? Welcome aboard, person with 0 experience. This post is from 6 years ago, and I like how this has happened so often that we now have a word for it, which is Nepo baby. As a teacher, there are times I would love to be able to put an arm around a student who is crying, or have a student come back to my room for extra help if they are struggling. But I'm male, so that can't happen. We are literally told by our administration never to do any of that if we are male. I understand the concern, but to the point where you literally can't offer any support to a student because of what might be taken out of context, that's doing way more harm than good. Dancing. I don't like to go dancing because I don't understand what you're supposed to do. You just dance. Do whatever feels right. Does dance. No, not like that. There's no one right way to dance. Just as there's no one wrong way to subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. I'm a lady. I can't stand how men aren't allowed to be caregivers, or like children. Man can't comfort a child or be at a park with his own without being accused of a crime. Man wants to stay at home with the kids? He's lazy and making the woman do all the work. It's crap. Equality means that men should be allowed to do the same roles as women and vice versa. I'm a male substitute teacher, and when I first started, another male sub told me, do not ever spend a second with a child by yourself. He also said, do not ever get too close to the kids and keep your hands visible at all times. A week later, I was caught with the student alone because she needed a pass to go to the nurse right before recess. The female principal had a talk with me and told me she was telling the parents of the child. Then I got fired. I emailed the vice superintendent and let him know I'm 18 and I've just graduated from the school district I work for. He said they weren't accusing me of anything, and after me explaining if they weren't accusing me of anything, they can't fire me. They gave me my job back. Have never and will never sub at that school again, and no other elementary schools at that. Edit. This was in Texas near Dallas. My district allows subs at 18 with a high school diploma, but it's a district-by-district decision. The principal of this school made it very clear to me that it was because I was a male teacher and the student was female. I'm in college now studying to become a graphic design/AV teacher in preferably high school. Before the incident, I worked all ages, K through 12th grade. After, I refused to work with elementary, and they prohibited me from working with the high school after finding out I had only just graduated. So I work mostly with 5th through 8th grade. Anytime I take my daughters to the park, it is painfully obvious that I am excluded or frowned at if I'm too close to their kids. It especially happens when mom groups are there together. It's not my fault that they're too busy sitting on the bench chatting to notice that their kids are now on top of the swing set and they didn't notice until I helped them down. You have no idea how it feels to be in a movie theater and have a mother get up and move her kids when you sit down. Or to be walking to your car and have a woman look over her shoulder, pull out her keys and pepper spray, then start power walking towards her car in fear. So many other similar things like this occur as well. It's basically someone calling you a criminal just because you are going about your normal life. When Aphrodite lies around naked in a giant shell, she's a goddess. But when I do it, I'm drunk and no longer welcome at the aquarium. Old people have this opinion that all young people are rude, yet in reality are the most rude, selfish, and impatient people you will ever meet. I live in the UK. It's amazing how they think they're being perfectly reasonable, but they're actually being completely biased and outright hypocritical without even realizing it. Edit, I know the feeling for those of you who work in retail and have to deal with these types of people on a regular basis. I work on checkouts in a store that, quite appropriately, rhymes with Painsbury's, and I get the same abuse. I just want to say that even though people give you crap, it is absolutely not an easy job to do. So well done for always keeping your cool. It's hard sometimes, I know. Edit 2. I am in no way implying all old people are jerkwads, but there's definitely a large portion of them who seem to follow this bias where I'm from.
Ugh, you millennials are so self-centered. All you do is whinge. You have no regard for your elders. Shame on you. You're going to be working in retail all your life. Do you know how to do anything?
Susan, a 55-year-old who refuses to leave the store until her expired $1 off coupon is accepted. It's because at that point in life, you stopped giving a crap about what people think entirely. Some people take that and act like a jerkwad because they don't care if someone is affected. Some people go the other way and figure there's no point stressing about things that don't matter. My two grandmothers were the opposite ends of these spectrums. One would scream at the bus driver because the price of a ticket had gone up since she first moved here. 50 years ago, Nan. Let it go, love. And one would happily sit in a restaurant if her food took 40 minutes to come out because, quote, I haven't got anywhere to be anyway, and it's nice to be out. In my building, there's this old lady. We always said good morning to one another or smiled, so she obviously knew I lived here. To enter my building, you need a key. Once it was raining and windy outside, and my key was lost somewhere in my bag under a pile of books, papers, and God knows what else. So I was freezing, searching frantically through my bag for the key when I see her coming out. I think, great, she'll let me in. She went out of the building and closed the door behind her while pushing me out so I could not come in, all the time looking at me suspiciously. I can't let you in if you don't have the key, she said. A couple of days later, the same situation occurred, except it was me coming out and she was looking for her key. I seized the opportunity for revenge and did exactly the same thing, closing the door in front of her face and telling her I couldn't let her in without a key. She was still screaming obscenities at me while I walked away. WTF? You reap what you sow. If you won't respect me, I won't respect you. Which doesn't sound like a double standard, but when you consider what context it's used in, it changes. My father used to say this when I wouldn't do exactly as he commanded me to. The issue is that there are levels of respect. While it might sound like if you won't treat me with a certain amount of respect, I won't show the same amount back, but it is executed as, if you won't respect me as an authority, I won't respect you as a basic human. Letting them treat you with way less respect than you treated them while still being fair in their eyes. If a girl sleeps with tons of guys, she has a reputation, but if I do it, all of a sudden I'm gay? Went to school with a guy who was caught making out with a dude and filleting another dude, claimed he wasn't gay. He has since come out as gay and no one cared because we knew it all along. Edit, the filleting and making out were two separate incidents. I'd have been more impressed if it was at the same time. Really annoys me when people complain about globalization but won't let go any of the benefits. People complain viciously about jobs being outsourced to Asia, but will fight to the death for their right to buy a toaster for $4. This right here. My extended family cracks me up because they all work for big three automakers, and more power to them, but will complain about not, quote, buying American. Never mind the fact that automotive is a very global industry and the most, quote, American car pound for pound is actually a Toyota because of how Toyota sources its components. Women can wear a million different cuts of shirts, pants, skirts, or dresses and still be business casual. Men, all we get is long pants and long sleeve or short sleeve button-downs. Oh, and maybe a polo. Screw that. It's too freaking hot here 90% of the time. I at least want to wear shorts. Been there. Had a woman for a boss who said men may only wear dress shoes and pants and button-down shirts, and we had zero contact with customers. Women could wear what they wanted. One very hot summer day, all the ladies were wearing sundresses and sandals, so I asked why women had a different set of standards. Her only reply, men's feet stink. If skirts are in the dress code, wear one. I did it one freaking time. I was called into the boss's office before my shift even started. He asked why. I said it was hot, wearing this was cooler, and within the dress code. He said, "You've made your point. The dress code will be amended to allow for shorts." By the first break of the morning, the new dress code was on the wall of the break room, and I was, quote, the hero in the paisley print skirt. Malicious compliance has been a specialty of mine ever since then. When/if you are 35 plus, regardless of career success, if you don't have a family and children by then, as a man, you're typically just labeled as a bachelor still enjoying the single life. When you're a woman, it's like you're some depressing spinster who has forsaken their gender by not fulfilling their expected mom duties that are unfortunately ingrained in the woman identity the media has created. Screw that momopia. Edit. It's really fascinating that a lot of people immediately assume that these fictitious people both want kids, but, quote, lost the game, or, quote, timed out of their biological clock. The point I'm trying to make is that a child-free life shouldn't be considered a you lost or ran out of time situation at all. Reproducing shouldn't be expected, and it shouldn't affect one's self-image. This is probably my favorite post on this thread. As someone who's a member of the LGBTQ community, Happy Pride Month, by the way, the topic of having children hardly comes up within our circles. A lot of the time, we don't want them, and that's fine. There are plenty of people who do that for us anyway. For the people in the community who do want them, that's perfectly fine too. It should never affect the image of someone if they start a family or not. Being a teenager. Hey, you're almost an adult now. You must be responsible for yourself and do things on your own. What the heck? Do exactly what I tell you. Don't try to make decisions by yourself. Oh my god, that nerd is way too into that video game. Now excuse me, but I need to go spend a crap ton of time and money on Clash of Clans. I know that most people are thinking gender politics, but as a Christian, I'm most bothered when others believers rail against Sharia law and Muslim fundamentalism while trying to impose their own fundamentalist legal vision on others. Edit. I don't mean to equate extreme Islamic fundamentalism with American Christian fundamentalism. I could have drawn a more common example from my own life as a teacher. My pastor has been very open about how I should be able to share my faith with my public school students in a way that he would not tolerate from a Muslim teacher. That's the double standard at its heart, but in a less extreme form. He and many others want to preserve prayer in schools, Christmas, and the 10 Commandments, but they do not want likewise expression for other beliefs. Also, I've spent my day teaching about lynchings in U.S. history, so I'm not in the mood to pretend that Christian fundamentalism can't get as extreme as Sharia. It's not the point I'm arguing, but it's not an invalid point in modern history. Don't trust Muslims, they'll force Sharia law on you. Now vote for this nice man who wants to ban gay marriage and teach creationism in school. I've never been ashamed of being a Christian, but I've sure as heck been ashamed of being in the same religion as some of these people. Men don't cry. Every single instance that says men aren't supposed to show emotions, tears, or anything that could be considered a, quote, weakness ticks me off to no end. Bonus irritation points if that's considered a sign of homosexuality, as if that's a weakness. Sadness isn't exclusively feminine. Bottling up emotions is one of the most toxic things I've ever done, and I'm probably still doing it unconsciously due to my upbringing. I'm certain that most men are, and that's messed up. Female friend shares a post on Facebook with the title, "Hot male French farmers pose topless for calendar because why not?" The comments and amount of likes the post received baffled me. If I was to share a post of a load of female models, because why not, I would be ridiculed or called perverted. And I know that 10 to 20 of my male friends wouldn't be posting comments like, "Heart eyes emoji, January though." Girl, how tall are you? Me, 6'1", why? Girl, oh good, because I only date at least 6 feet tall guys. Me, how much do you weigh? Girl, not your business. Girl on matches. Probably my own. That's to say, noticing the hypocrisy in my beliefs and actions. If I can't call BS on myself, then I don't have much of a right to call it on others. Hopefully, I'm arcing toward improvement, but I have a lot of work to do. People complaining online about people using their phone while driving, by taking a photo of that person while they themselves are driving. I can do what offends you because it's freedom. You can't do what offends me because it's not politically correct. Ooh, the urge to attend a conservative Christian family dinner and call my grandma, grandpa, and my grandpa, grandma. Now we'll see how they really feel about pronouns. Oh, you know I'm not your grandpa, right? And I'm not your grandma. So you like being called what you prefer, huh? Most people give the older generations grief about using computers. In my experience, I've seen plenty of millennials who can use their phone but don't understand how to use basic office software. In my experience, nothing 15 minutes in the help of Google can't solve. Your coworkers are absolutely free to joke about how they're going to drink a glass of wine or a whole bottle by myself when they finally get home from work. If I mention I take a couple hits of weed from a vaporizer before going to bed, they'll think I'm an addict that can't make it through life without a crutch. Talking about the historic slave trade in/from Africa is encouraged. Talking about non-African slave trade, example, the Irish being sold to the Caribbean, I know is called indentured servitude, makes you a racist. My SO and I are of different ethnicities, but we agreed that it's pretty messed up. We can't figure out why people, black or white, have such an issue with this. People get really angry about it. I'm American, so maybe that has something to do with it? Can't we just agree slavery is a crappy thing to do all around, no matter what you call it? Women are allowed to wear men's clothes, and nobody cares too much. Being a tomboy is normal. Men aren't allowed to wear women's clothes in public. That's too weird for everyone else. Being against abortion, but giving absolutely no craps about the mother's health/financial situation and the child's health or well-being. We blatantly accept lies from our corrupt governments. When whistleblowers reveal information on said governments, they're traitors. Yeah, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The reason why whistleblowers are given a complimentary deep tissue head massage from the CIA when they expose corruption is because those powers want to stay unopposed and will do whatever it takes to keep it that way. Late to the party, but my girlfriend and I have one that she finds funny and I just find irritating. Both of us train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's like wrestling with chokeholds and attempted limb snapping for the uninitiated. As with any combat sport, you get roughed up all the time, and anyone who trains a few times a week constantly has bruises. Bruises on the shins, arms, and wrists are especially common. If people see either of our bruises and feel the need to comment, the reaction is very different for me being a guy and her being a girl. To me, oh, did you get in a fight? To her, who's hurting you? There are hotlines you can call. This happened with me and my fiancé with different sports. I've been playing rugby since I was 14, and he plays hockey. You get banged up playing both those things. Once I took an elbow to the face and broke my nose. He took me to the ER, where they saw me with a broken nose and his black eye from a game a few days before, and separated us under the guise of, quote, needing to look at me alone. I got told repeatedly there were resources for me to leave if I needed to, financial or otherwise. Meanwhile, he got interrogated by a nurse in the waiting area over my nose and how it happened. Never mind the fact that we were both roughed up, and if we were fighting, he could have easily been the victim defending himself in this situation. They just saw a man who's older than me and registered it as him beating the crap out of me, and me afraid to leave him.
What? You know what? Just to be safe, thing you did ended up saving your butt later. I was an expediter at a restaurant. It was super busy and I was trying to get runners for food. Was about to send out a stack of dim sum when I looked at the ticket again with a note that said, "No peanuts on the tempura tofu." I had read it earlier and didn't sprinkle peanuts on it. Another server was about to run it to the table when I told him to wait and get the actual server for the table. We were slammed and he was kinda mad, but he went and got him anyway. The actual server came back and he's all frustrated when I ask him, "Does your no peanuts guy not like peanuts or is he allergic to them?" He's very allergic to them. That's why I put no peanuts on the ticket. He was all being crappy with me. I told him, "Well, the frickin' tempura tofu is fried in frickin' peanut oil." Didn't realize the head chef was behind me and heard the whole thing. Server didn't know we only use peanut oil. It was an Asian fusion, really nice upscale restaurant. Needless to say, she, the head chef, frickin' reamed this guy. I was a half second from sending that food out too. Would have been bad. Whew, I mean, in that kind of business, yeah, you gotta be careful with that sort of thing all the time. I mean, when I really think about it, I think it's only been in the last 5 years that I've been consistently asked at every restaurant that I go to, "Do you have allergies?" or anything like that. So, it's a good thing that people are looking out for it a lot more. Safety glasses. When working away, it's easy to talk yourself into doing something really quick without them, and there is always a voice in your head yelling at you to put them on. Stopped grinding the thing I was working on, got my glasses, came back, and then this chunk flies up and cracks the right lens. Spidey senses 1, Murphy's Law 0. I knock out my shoes and squeeze the toes for good measure. "Hi, Mr. Brown Recluse." Only happened once, but was enough to convince me it was a good habit to have. I've had a handful of these in my life. The one that popped in my head first was from a party when I was 16. It was in a small farm town about 20 to 25 minutes from my actual town, and everyone was partying in somebody's parents' barn and having a real good time. I didn't realize that our designated driver had been drinking all night. When it was time to go, I couldn't even tell she was tipsy, but something wasn't right, so I didn't want to drive back with them for whatever reason. I decided to get the verbal tongue lashing from my mom when she came to pick me up. Well, my friends in the first car were apparently veering across the road, got picked up by the cops, and all of them got to spend the night in jail. Glad I opted for my mom. That is a really crummy move of that designated driver to do. You have a responsibility for your friends if you are the designated driver. That's just a fact. Arrived in San Francisco a week into a trip. As we gather our things during a moment of downtime, I go back to check the bus because, it never hurts. Found my passport, which I had no idea I'd dropped. Was about to put a new load of laundry into my washing machine in the dark. Saw what looked to be a large sock still in the washing machine. Put my hand halfway into the washing machine, then pulled my hand back up and thought, I don't usually leave things in my washing machine. Turned on the light and it was a bat sitting in there. How to get in your house, how to get in your washing machine, but also, did you know that bats actually are one of the biggest carriers of rabies? I only heard that the other day. Whether it's true or not, you tell me. When I was 5 years old, my parents took my sister and me to a planetarium show, and every kid got a souvenir pencil that had the distance of the planets from the sun written on it. Mercury, Venus, Earth, etc. The guy running the planetarium show said something like, "Hang on to these pencils until 7th grade, kids, and you can use them to cheat on your astronomy tests." He was joking, but I never forgot. And sure enough, it was the exact pencil I used to cheat on the astronomy in 7th grade. I felt smart, but also bad because I didn't feel good about cheating and almost never cheated after that. That is the kind of thing that I think about a lot, just a little tidbit that someone says that just gets the gears working in your mind. You're like, I will remember this forever. I had a car sitting on jack stands because I needed to do some transmission work. Before climbing under it, I thought it'd be a good idea to rock the car around. One of the jack stands was not in the right spot and the car slipped off it, slamming down on the front disc brakes. Would have killed me. This is from 30 years ago, so some details may be different these days. After enlisting in the army, recruits get a list of everything they must bring to boot camp. On this list was a padlock. During processing the 5 or so days before the real training starts, recruits are given their military equipment, including duffel bags, and told to put their things they brought with them in the duffel bag. After finally getting everything in, I was left with just the padlock. I had no idea what to do with it, but I noticed if I closed my duffel bag in a certain way, I could close the lock on the hook. So when we get to the training unit and off of the cattle trucks and a few hundred drill sergeants are yelling and screaming and telling us to line up, which we do, our duffel bags are in front of us. The drill sergeant then proceeds to check if the bags are locked, and if not, they grab them at the bottom and whirl them around, flinging the entire contents on the ground. Everyone in the entire company had their stuff dumped except for me and the one other guy, only because locking my duffel bag was the only thing I thought of doing. Putting it in my pocket was not an option because they made it very clear clear that we were not to have any civilian items in our uniform pockets. Saved an email where a lead developer told me to do something stupid. A couple years later, him, now a manager who liked to yell at his subordinates, we were talking about this stupid behavior and he yelled, "Well, why did you do that?" I pulled up his email, clearly instructing me to do just that. He sputtered and walked off speechless. This guy is one of the reasons I still have trust issues with management, even after a string of really competent, caring, trustworthy managers. This is why the archive email button exists. I bought a used Subaru Baja that was 5 years old at the time and had 75k miles for $12k. The salesman offered an extended warranty that covered the engine for $2,500, would last 3 years, 36k miles. That was kind of a lot, and I usually don't buy those. I don't know what got into me that day, but I said, sure. 1 month and 750 miles later, after an oil change at a mechanic shop, oil started shooting into the pistons? I'm not good with cars. Oil went where it wasn't supposed to go is the point. Completely ruined the engine and turbo. The dealer had to keep it for 3 weeks. The warranty company flew someone out to inspect the car and eventually approved a replacement engine, turbo, and any other affected parts. Total repairs cost almost $11k and the warranty then applied to all the new parts too. Car drove like it was brand new. Later discovered the car had 5 previous owners before me, but I couldn't find any accidents or serious repair history. This is probably the only time buying an extended warranty on something actually worked out in my favor. I bought a really nice tablet a few years ago, a Wacom Intuos Cintiq, essentially a drawing tablet built into a laptop for animation and the like. Sometimes when you buy nice things, they come in nice boxes, and for some reason I don't really want to throw this box away immediately. I put it in the storage area of my basement and forget about it. After only about a month, this $2,500 tablet stopped working. It wasn't dropped or damaged, and I'm still not sure how it broke. It would simply try to boot up and fail, crashing and demanding a restart. I called support, and after several calls and many hours, we were unable to resolve the issue. They said I could send it back and get a new one if it wasn't physically damaged. They told me it needed to be sent back in the original box. I now keep boxes for everything I buy until the warranty expires. I work in IT. When I started working where I do 9 years ago, I noticed that volume shadow copies, VSS, were not turned on the file server. I went ahead and turned it on, and thank God I have never had to pull a tape in the whole 9 years, and I hope to not ever have to. I did not ask for permission to do it because I knew corporate wouldn't let me do it. Space was money back then. The guy at corporate that was over all their servers called and thanked me for doing it because he was also going to do it, and since I did it first, he was allowed to. I have had to use the VSS copies many times, but most recently for our exec VP of quality accidentally deleted her network share with all of our employees' info on them. Thankfully, VSS is on, and it saved my butt as well as hers. I was remodeling my house, took out a loan and had to get the house appraised to get the loan, found that my house was worth $100k more than I had it insured for, raised my limit on the home insurance to $50k more than the appraised value in anticipation of completing renovations. 2 weeks later, house burned to the ground due to a faulty bathroom fan that I did not touch. City insurance company and loan company all sent separate investigators due to how shady it looked. Well, that is simply unfortunate. I'm sorry your hard work went to waste. A couple of years ago, I restarted The Sopranos from season 1. I think it's in the first season where the water heater leaks and floods Tony's basement. So there are these scenes where he's waiting around in a flooded basement. I was imagining what a nightmare that would be. It reminded me that when I bought my house, the inspector told me I would need to replace the water heater within 5 years. I then realized that was like 12 years prior. So I suddenly got nervous. I went and looked at the water heater and it seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I also did not have the money to pay to have a new water heater installed. So I decided to go ahead and buy a new water heater and then save up money to pay someone to install it. The water heater arrived and I stored it in the laundry room. Just a few weeks after it arrived, I happened to look at the old water heater and I noticed the catch pan under it had an inch of water in it. It was leaking. Oh no! Emergency. Except wait a minute, I already have a plan for this. So instead of saving up money to hire a plumber, I went to YouTube and learned how to install my own water heater. It all worked out perfectly, all because The Sopranos made me anxious about the condition of my water heater, causing me to randomly purchase a water heater I had no immediate plans to install. I actually coincidentally started watching The Sopranos myself very recently. For the first time, I'm on season 4, and I am enjoying it a lot. When I was 20, I worked at a gas station. They had just changed the law to if the customer looked 40 and under, you had to ID them for cigarettes. I was by myself. Lady came in and ordered a pack of Camels. She looked roughly 45, so I didn't ask. I had this nagging feeling throughout the transaction that it would be a very good idea to ask. So before I took her money, I kind of laughed and said, "Mind if I see your ID real quick?" "I'm real sorry, you're clearly old enough, but they changed the law recently on who we have to ID." She just looked at me and said, "I'm so glad you asked," and flashed her work card at me. She was a frickin' expert. If I didn't ask her, I would have been arrested and fined. That was the day I learned to trust my gut, and I also suck at telling people's ages. She was 35. Went hiking in the middle of the day with a friend and his girlfriend. I brought a flashlight for each of us. Well, the hike took a lot longer than expected, and my buddy's GF sprained her foot at the end. It took us nearly 3 times as long to get back, and it was dark with relatively rocky terrain. Those flashlights saved our bacon. I can't even fathom how long it would have taken to stumble in the dark otherwise. I had originally booked a rental car for a trip to Iceland using my credit card points. 2 days before I cancelled and booked it with my credit card, which provides rental vehicle coverage, because it looked like the weather wasn't going to be great while we were there, and I wanted the extra protection. While there, we got into an accident for which we were not at fault. The car was almost a total loss, and I had to pay up to $12,000 out of pocket to the company. It took a few months and a ton of paperwork, but the credit card company refunded all of it. I still think about how so lucky it was that I changed the booking. I would have been ruined for a very long time otherwise. I used to be a banner tow pilot and was often asked to fly banners over the New York City area, especially over the Hudson River. I would pick them up at an airport in New Jersey and make my way from there. Typically, if you were to run into some kind of engine problem, you have a fair number of places you could theoretically land if you had the engine trouble. Not so much over the New York City metro area, so I picked out a trail of breadcrumbs, if you will, of specific places I could try to land my plane if I ever had to. On the 1-year anniversary of the Miracle on the Hudson, Captain Sullenberger, etc., I was given the job to fly a banner over a boat on the Hudson that would be carrying the crew and some passengers from the flight. On the way there, my engine failed while I was less than 1,000 feet above the ground, sinking quickly. I needed to find a place to land right away. Fortunately, my best previously selected spot was just to my left, a landfill on Staten Island, and I put the plane right on top of it. This entire topic is basically preparedness is a virtue. My friends and I were always giving crap to another friend because he was never wearing the seatbelt while driving. One night, another friend and him drove me home. It was pretty late and we were all tired. When they dropped me off, I told him, "Use the frickin' seatbelt, you dumb butt." The next day, around lunchtime, I got a call that my 2 friends got in a car accident. The dumb butt fell asleep while driving my other dumb butt friend's car. They hit a parked car which hit the car in front of it and got stuck into a wall. The parked car acted as a ramp for their car. They flipped over and slid like 20 meters upside down. For some reason, the dumb butt had his seatbelt on for the first time ever and he didn't get injured. Both of them crawled outside the car without a single scratch. If I'm not wrong, my friend in the passenger seat broke his pinky though. Dumb butt learnt his lesson and his seatbelt is always on now, even when he's in the passenger seat. My mother's co-worker convinced her to get the best possible insurance when pregnant, because this co-worker had kids deprived of oxygen at birth. She said she could lower it once the kids were 5 and seemed normal. It was a struggle as my parents were both in college and working while raising my brother, so they were looking to cut costs wherever possible. I ended up being born with a birth defect that required a transplant before 5. Before the new doctor even told her what was wrong, after rushing me away via ambulance, they asked her if she had insurance. She was able to say yes. Gold star, platinum, whatever. Many kids died even with the top-class care I received, so I surely wouldn't have made it without it. I'm turning 30 next year. Thanks, random lady I've never met. Saved a receipt from my dentist. They charged me, then delayed the procedure I paid for. When I asked for a refund, they changed my entire bill and told me I owed them another $300 when all they actually did was a cleaning and x-rays. I submitted both copies of the invoice to my dental insurance company and told them what happened. 3 weeks later, the insurance company, Delta Dental, resolved the issue with the dentist and I got a refund. Despite the dentist attempting to defraud me, they still regularly call me asking me to come back in. Recently, they changed their name and moved a block down the road to try and hide from the plethora of negative reviews on Yelp. I should really go for a dental checkup soon, actually, now that I think about it. Very minor, but once I was going out drinking in San Francisco with some friends. We loved going to this kind of dive bar in the Tenderloin, rough neighborhood. Anyway, I had just bought a new car and was worried about parking in the Tenderloin. All my friends assured me it'd probably be fine. As we parked on the street about 2 blocks from the bar, a homeless guy came up to me and said, "Man, you don't want to park that new crap here. Somebody gonna smash them windows and steal your stereo, your sunglasses." On a whim, I just said, "Yeah, but we're kinda late. Want to keep an eye on it for me?" He pauses for a second, goes, "Like a sanctuary guard?" "Yeah, man, I'll watch your car. You got $10? My friends, confused, started mumbling about just walking on, but I thought it couldn't hurt so much, so I gave the guy $10. "Here's your $10. Keep an eye on it, man. If it's still in good shape when I get back, I'll give you another $10. Damn, $20? All I gotta do is sit here and make sure nobody frickin' smashes my window. There isn't anything inside anyway. It's new. I got you, man. I got you." He took a huge swig of this bottle of wild turkey and we were on our way. Anyway, the night progresses. We drink and have a good time, and now we're all proper drunk except for my friend Mary, who was our designated driver. I gave her my keys and we start walking down the block. One by one, we notice almost every parking spot has shattered glass next to it. Somebody went through the area and smashed each window to get into the cars. I get this sinking feeling in my stomach. I'm already mentally prepared to have to shell out a few $100 to replace the window of a car that wasn't even mine a week ago. But lo and behold, we get to the spot and my car is fine, and the homeless guy is bundled up in a sleeping bag, and he sees me and goes, "Hey, you're back. You won't believe what crap I did for you. Check this out." And he shows me this huge frickin' bruise on his face and pulls his gloves and shows me his knuckles, which are scraped to hell. "What happened?" I said. "Some bunch of expletives. He comes around here smashing windows and grabbing crap. He gets to your car," and I'm like, "Yo, pass that one. That crap's my responsibility." And he turned around, pulled back on this big old brick he's got in his hands, and I jumped that mother from behind and he hit me in the head with his goddamn brick. But I knocked him good, man. I changed that mother's mind, man. He was all strung out and he ran off down the block. My friends and I are staring at this guy incredulously. My car is fine, spotless. I reach into my pocket for $10, but I realize I don't have cash. "Dude, thanks so much. Give me a second. I gotta get your cash," I say as I walk into the liquor store on the corner, use the ATM. As I'm checking out, I realize they've got 750s of wild turkey in there for like $10. I buy one for him. I give him the $10 and the bottle. "Thanks for keeping an eye on the car for me. You would have thought this dude just won the lottery." "Oh, damn," he just kept screaming. Then he kicked the pile of blankets and crap on the side, and I realized he had a girl in there sleeping, and he goes, "Wake your butt up, look what I got." And she rubs her eyes and looks confused at us, then at him and at the bottle, and then at us. Wordlessly, she reaches for the bottle as he hands it to her, and he's still screaming and hollering like it's the best day of his life. You gave that man a sworn duty, and he carried it out, I guess. Very simple, but a roll of toilet paper in the glove compartment and my car has literally saved my butt multiple times. A tropical storm was blowing through my city a few months ago and we were projected to get some winds, gusts, and significant rain. Because our parking lot isn't large enough for all staff and our clients, a lot of us have to park on the street, which is lined with large old trees. As I rolled up on the morning, we were due to get the storm. I parked in my usual spot down the block. Before I shut the car off, though, I noticed that this particular spot was located directly across the street from one of the largest trees on the block. Thinking, you know what, just to be safe, I put the car in reverse and backed up about 10 feet, safely out of the direct line of fire from any trees. In the middle of that afternoon, in the midst of the howling wind and driving rain, we heard a huge thud down the street. Went to investigate, and that same tree I'd been parked across the street from fell across the road and missed my car by about 8 feet. At that moment, I was glad that I decided to play it safe. The car parked on the other side of the street directly across from where I'd initially been got absolutely destroyed. Crushed roof, windows blown out, just pulverized. One day I got hit in the head while surfing. It turned out to be a concussion and I went to the hospital with my mum. I was 17 at the time. We met with the doctor in A&E and he said, "It's a concussion. We could do a CT scan if you want, but there's probably no need." I was unsure and just said, "Yeah, I would like a scan." After the scan was done, I was told that they didn't see anything, but the radiographer would be checking it in the morning. Next day, I got a call to be told that I needed an MRI, that they had found a tumor in my brain. If they didn't catch it there, I would have lost my vision from the tumor and it would have been too late to do anything at that stage. Hey, if you're at the doctor's, why not just ask for the whole shebang? Well, unless you're in America. I stayed up late one night playing video games, but I left an unfinished can of soda out overnight. When I woke up the next morning, I picked it up, held it about an inch away from my mouth and was about to drink it. Then I thought, wait a minute, I don't want this hot AF soda. So I walked over to the sink to pour out what was left. As I poured it, a huge cockroach crawled out of the hole of the top. I promptly high-fived myself.
Late night store clerks. What are the strangest things that have happened on the job? I work nights at a gas station in a pretty good neighborhood in New Hampshire, so usually it's pretty boring. One night, I did have a customer really creep me out. I was just getting ready to close down the store when a little old man came in. He was small and dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt. I made the usual small talk of asking him how his day was going. Then, as I was handing him his change, he firmly grabbed my wrist, made direct eye contact with me, and said, "Hell is a real place, and the devil has already got his hand on you, girl. Be careful." I worked third shift at a Sheetz. For those of you who don't know, it's a gas station / convenience store / fast food place. On multiple occasions, I have been cussed out because we discontinued pickle chips. I've had people tell me to screw off, break things, demand to call corporate, etc. Drunk people love pickle chips. Edit, I get it, sober people love pickle chips too. I've never been a store clerk, but I was lucky enough to witness the following story. 7-Eleven, circa 1996. A guy walks up to the surly clerk, who seemed to work 25 hours a day, and asks, "Do you sell eggs by the half dozen?" Clerk, "No, you have to buy a dozen." Guy, "I only need 6. Clerk, "I don't care. You get 12 or you get 0. Without saying another word, the guy walks back to get his dozen eggs, pays, and walks out. Then he throws his 6 unwanted eggs at the store window before driving off. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift in an all-night garage for a few months when I was 18. There was this weird Vietnamese dude who always drove a white Honda Prelude and always filled up with 66 pounds of petrol. He wore the same pair of cutoffs every time, with blotches and bruises all over his legs, and used to literally wander in, leaning against the displays, pick up as many yogurts as he could carry, pay with the 50-pound note, and stagger out. One time he came in with these 2, obviously prostitute women, who were draped all over him with the biggest pupils I have ever seen. They stood at the counter while I scanned all their yogurts, and he spoke for the first and only time. Staring at me, said to the women, "She can join us, can't she?" One of the women looked at me and said, "You'll make a lot more money if you come with us, darling." I nervously laughed, took their cash, and they left, grinning in silence. The place I worked had a monitor/camera that showed you on it as you walked it. It was like 10 minutes before closing, and a guy walks in and just starts rapping into the camera and acting like he's shooting a music video. He went through an entire song. A man came in 10 times within a single hour. He kept leaving and coming back without buying a single thing. Finally, on the 10th time, he comes up to the counter with a box of tampons. I proceed to ask him, "Rough night?" To which he responded, "I really don't want to talk about it." Had a guy pull up to the pump, unhooked it wanting post-pay. Our policy said not to authorize it between midnight and 5 a.m., which was prepay only. I announced this to the dude over the loudspeaker. I'm pretty sure he was wasted. He continued to get more and more belligerent. When he started beating the pumps with the nozzle/hose, I called the cops. Dude starts banging on the door. Locked, no way he could get in. Can't, gets frustrated, and finally just whips his deal out and starts wagging it in the general direction of the store. The CCTV is getting all this, so I just start laughing my butt off. Then, the cops pull up, and 2 deputies put this poor, drunk, deal-wagging man away in the back of a police car. I quit a few months after that. I worked at a small convenience store in the early 1990s. They had one of those fry delis that had chicken, JoJo's, corn dogs, burritos, etc. This particular night, I had run out of burritos and chicken. I also shut the thing down and cleaned it all out about an hour before closing. About 5 minutes before I was closing up, a guy walked in and asked for some burritos. I told him I was out of them, and that I was just about to close and the fryer was shut down. He walked around the store for a minute, I assumed he was looking for something else to buy, and then he came up to the counter, pulled out a knife, and told me if I didn't cook him some burritos, he was going to stab me. I freaked out, but told him I had none to cook. I showed him the freezer and told him I would happily cook anything he wanted from it, but he will see I was out of burritos. He looked at it for about a minute, turned to me, and said, "You really are out." I replied, "Yeah." He then put the knife away and left the store. Edits. Just to clarify, a JoJo is basically a deep-fried potato wedge. They were very popular where I grew up. I guess there are other names for them in other parts of the country, but where I grew up, we called them JoJos, and you ordered them by weight. For example, you would say, "Give me a half pound of JoJos." Also, as far as I know, the guy never got caught. I called the police and described the guy, but never heard from them again, so I assume he got away. The burrito bandito could still be roaming the streets. And thanks for the gold, kind burrito-loving soul. It's official. My highest rated comment ever is about nearly being stabbed over a burrito. A guy came in to buy beer after hours. Told him I couldn't sell. It was against the law. He pulled out a badge, said, "I am the law." I called 911 and a cop shows up. Tells me if I can just let it go, I wouldn't have any more problems. I let it go. 2 weeks later, driving home late at night, way over the speed limit, I got pulled over. It was cop number 2. He came up to the car, recognized me, said, "Slow down," and left. I used to work the graveyard at a gas station near my place. A pretty normal night. Clean, stock smokes, clean again, sit behind the counter. A woman came in about mid-30s with a little boy with her. She was in tears and her clothes were torn a bit. She came up and asked to use the phone. When she got off without getting an answer, she asked to stay here for a bit. I told her it would be no problem. About 20 minutes go by, and I wound up giving her and her kid free drinks and one of the sandwiches we have on the hot rack. She was in the store for about 30 minutes until her, quote, boyfriend came in and found her and her kid. He was pretty calm at first, but then started screaming at her and telling her she needs to come with him. Luckily, before anything crazy happened, a cruiser pulled up to the front and 2 cops came in and intervened. He was arrested right there. I guess he had been beating her in front of her kid and she was trying to run away. I'm glad I got to keep her away from harm for at least a little bit. It was a scary night. Let's see. Closed the store to play hockey on the roof. Had a guy come in and, quote, inspect individual eggs in each carton until he found the perfect egg. Had an old guy who asked to use our bathroom, but first he needed reading material and asked for an adult mag from behind the counter. But when we gave it to him, he said he didn't like that one and asked for a different one. Then he died while taking a crap. You know, normal stuff like that. You know, I actually used to work retail for a couple months. Craziest interaction I ever had was a guy who came up to me and started striking up conversation, but what he said really stuck out to me. He said, "You should subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below." I just kinda nodded and thanked him for watching. Some people. Huge guy comes in and asks to use the restroom. No big deal. I'm not one to stand in the way of nature. Well, maybe 20 minutes later, guy comes out in a huff and says, "Dude, I'm really sorry. I screwed up your toilet. It's all good, man. I'll get it." Not really needing spectators while I cleaned crap, I expect the guy to shrug his shoulders and walk off. Well, he looks back into the back where the restroom is with a look of disgusting concern and says, "Man, it's really coming out. Like, it's coming out into the back room." I rush back, thinking I've got to at least stop this from becoming some kind of biohazard event. I round the corner and there's nothing, but I can smell an unholy, overwhelming stench. I continue back, expecting to ruin my shoes at any moment until I reach the men's room. At this point, I've had to cover my face with my shirt and focus on breathing through my mouth, but I reach the door with no issue. Frustrated from the mind-numbing odor alone, I push the men's room door open, ready for at least an inch of gas station dukes all over the floor. As the door swings forward, I see nothing but water filling my eyes and the black/brown human paint the fat jerk left against the back of the bowl. Ticked to the point of rushing out, fully intending on asking this rotten jerk what the deal was, I round the corner again to see his big, poop-eating grin spread across his face. Stinks, huh? TLDR, got jigsawed in the breathing in noxious fumes. I worked at a 24/7 gas station in a small college town. One night, the club across the street had a fight break out and about 50 people were pepper sprayed by the police when they responded at about 1:30 a.m. 5 minutes later, cue 50 angry clubgoers bursting into the store, running to the dairy cooler, dousing themselves in milk, and then running back out. I just stood there in utter confusion and then told my boss I didn't want the late shift anymore. Edit, man, I really missed out on an amusing pun with utter confusion, huh? Not a late night clerk, as my store closes at 9, but some pretty strange things have happened. In no particular order, a woman tried to tell me that Jesus could talk to her through her eyes and that we were all going to hell. A man came in for no reason other than to take a dump in aisle 3. Some guy tried to come in and steal cigarettes from behind our counter and may have gotten away with it if he had not then tried to buy cigarettes with the other ones stuffed down his shirt. 2 different people have tried to lock themselves in our bathroom and tell us that that was their home now. Once a week, someone will try to buy our entire cereal aisle, just pulling entire displays off the shelf and trying to do it as quickly as possible, like getting into a line is some sort of free pass and we have to let them buy the stuff. An ex-employee one time came back in after hours as we were closing down stuff for the night and started to work. She was behind the deli counter just cutting meat, talking to invisible customers. We later found out she was high on pills. A guy got locked in our bathroom freezer after hours. We only knew he was there because he escaped and broke a window that set off our alarms. That was the first time we replaced the giant display windows. The second time was right after we had just shut down for the night. Kids on bikes threw rocks through our windows. The sound was terrifying. Even though we had them on camera, the store never pressed charges. Story time. In high school, I worked at a little mom-and-pop department store. We sold odds and ends at super high prices, and they eventually went out of business when I was a couple of years into college. Anyway, one night I was working a closing shift, and that involved shutting down the registers, turning off all the lights, etc. We had just stocked these baby doll toys on the shelf that day, those motion-sensing ones that giggled and cooed when you got close to them. Well, the lights turning off must have triggered them, because after the first chunk goes out, we hear coos. Second chunk goes out, giggles. Third chunk goes out, and we hear, "Islam is the light!" Needless to say, we whipped those suckers back to the manufacturer. They didn't know about the propaganda babies because they only said that phrase randomly, so it must have gotten past whatever testing process they had. Very freaky to hear in a dark store at night. I watched a truck pull up to one of our pumps. Guy gets out to pump gas. A Durango comes hauling it from the back of the building. Another guy gets out with a gun aimed at the first guy. I was on the phone with a friend of mine and said, "Someone just pulled a gun at the pump. I'm gonna have to let you go." I called the cops. Turned out the guy pumping gas had robbed a store 3 towns over and the Durango was an undercover cop who had been in pursuit. Another time, a guy came in, walked to the back cooler, got a can of Sprite, and came to the register to check out. As I'm ringing him up, one of our local cops walks in, gun drawn, says, "Put your hands on the counter, put your hands on the counter now." Well, I put my hands on the counter along with the customer because all I'm thinking is, I have no idea what I've done, but I'm very sorry for it. Turned out that guy had been involved with the robbery of a convenience store in the next town, 5 minutes away, and had fled in a Mustang with 2 other individuals. They wrecked the car trying to evade the cops. All 3 dispersed, 2 were apprehended pretty quickly, but the third came into the store to either blend in or rob me. I honestly don't know which. After the festivities and them hauling the guy away, the cop told me he had almost lost it when I put my hands on the counter too, and that I should really rethink working closing shifts at my age. I was 19 at the time, and I am female. I laughed and I was like, "Give up free entertainment?" Edit. First story to clarify, the undercover cop jumped out of the Durango with a gun pointed at the suspect. Graveyard shift at a gas station. Full serve gets shut down after 11 p.m. because there's only 1 clerk on site. Traffic cones block the full serve pumps, signs inform the customer. Around midnight, a van pulls up with California plates and peace love signs in the windows. Woman gets out, moves the traffic cones, and pulls up to full serve. I use the intercom to tell her that she will have to use self-serve if she wants gas. No answer. I go to the door and try to wave her over or call out to her. Can't see any sign of her. I shrug and go back inside. I'm not allowed to leave the store unattended, so there's not much I can do. 10 minutes later, a woman gets out of the van and comes in. "I've been waiting for service for over an hour," she says. I decide not to argue about the time elapsed and just say, "I'm very sorry, ma'am, but we don't offer full serve after 11. Perhaps you noticed the traffic cones and signs to that effect? You expect to pump my own gas?" she says. Again, I'm sorry. I'd be happy to help you, but I can't leave the store unattended. I appreciate your understanding. She snorts and digs a 20 out of her purse and tosses it on the counter. She goes out, moves the van to self-serve, pumps the gas. Then she comes back. "May I use your restroom, please?" she asks. "Absolutely. Right back there," I say, relieved. She goes to the restroom, and she's in there for about 15 minutes. I start to worry. Finally, she comes out and comes to the counter. "I know all about you," she says. You're the one who brought the Black Plague. You brought it all the time forever. It was always you. You caused all those deaths, all that suffering. Did you like hearing the babies wail and scream? I bet you loved it. All the demons love it. That's you. You're a demon. You are evil. I can tell. And I'll tell you something else. You skunk me up, I'll skunk you back." I stared at her, retreating back, speechless. She got in her van and drove away. Skunk her up? Because I didn't pump her gas? Weird. I went back to fronting shelves for about 30 seconds before I thought, perhaps I should check the bathroom. I walked back and pushed open the door. Poop. Poop everywhere. On the walls, the floor, the mirror, the sink, all over the toilet lid and the tank, crap on the door, clearly smeared by hand. And oh, the stench. As I turned to get the cleaning supplies, I muttered under my breath, "You skunked me back all right. Yes, you did." I worked through my college years at a grocery store in a college town. I worked in the deli/bakery and daytime cashier. One night, I was asked to work the late shift for time and a half. I didn't have class the next day, so heck yeah. It was a night I'll never forget. As I was transitioning from day to late night shift around 9 p.m., a kid came in and started just eating olives off the deli bar with his bare hands. Cops get called. He is found 5 minutes later assaulting the soda machine outside, screaming and crying at the same time. Then arrested while high on what was probably PCP or meth. A plethora of drunk sorority and frat jerks pouring in between midnight and 3 a.m. trying to buy alcohol when they were already wasted. The town had a bus system that ran all over the place for free, and we were a very central stop. Had to call a, quote, code wood to summon our late-night stalker who was indeed built like a tree trunk. Some punks wanted to steal some fillies and demanded to, quote, just hold on to them while they shopped, then got confrontational when I wouldn't give the fillies to them before paying. For clarification, since I'm a terrible writer, Wood was a night stockman who probably went to bodybuilding competitions on the weekends. Hence, I was calling him to the front to help me deal with the hooligans until the police could show up. After the cops showed up with their canine from said confrontation, she decided to hang out and talk to me for a while. She showed me a bunch of fake IDs she collected. Insomniac Kid kept coming into the store to buy food and smokes. The street sweeper guys showed up around 5 a.m. to clean the lot. They had to come inside to use the restroom. In that amount of time, their street sweeper got stolen because they left the keys in and running. Not sure if they ever got it back, but I imagine it will be hard to hide in a small college town. TLDR, what was a highly functional, prestigious college town got rather seedy at night. I also spent a lot of time reading, but I don't suppose people came here to read about my Asimov novel. Edit, Phillies are a cigarillo/blunt used to smoke weed, usually in a party scenario. They are commonly shoplifted after normal business hours. Thus, they are kept behind the counter so they are not easily accessed. Back from my days working graveyard shift at a grocery store. Let's see what I can remember. Had a former employee come in drunk one night and call the cops on himself for shoplifting because he wanted somewhere to sleep that night. Had an employee come in on a night off all ticked off, proceeds to walk straight to the back room without a word. About 10 minutes later, there was a successive loud pop, 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 pop. Turns out he climbed up to the roof to fire his gun. A customer came up and told me he heard something fall down in the back room. Tons of stoners buying ice cream at 2 a.m. Meth heads buying Brillo pads and ammonia after 3 a.m. Bars closed at 2 a.m., so all the cops were usually gone from the area by around 3. Saw a drunk guy fall asleep while his car idled along in the parking lot. Luckily, he hit a curb and no damage was done, but the cops got a good laugh out of that one. A tall, drunk Russian guy tries to buy beer after the 2 a.m. legal cutoff time, then proceeds to pick on a sober customer half his size. The little guy took one swing and broke the Russian dude's nose. Had a guy come in when another employee was taking a dump. I'm so sorry that there's so much poop in this episode, I have no idea why. Guy really had to take a dump, so we turned around and took a dump at the urinal, asking the employee on the toilet for toilet paper. In high school, I worked at a 24-hour pharmacy which also had a small selection of beer. At about 2 a.m., this guy walks in 3 sheets to the wind, saunters over to the beer and grabs 2 12-packs. He comes up to the counter and slams the beer down, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out a half-eaten taco and puts it on the counter. I couldn't say anything because I was so perplexed. I just let him walk out with the beer and told my bosses I thought he might have a gun also. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. A couple weeks later, he apparently tried this at the family-owned gas station across the street and got shot. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. Every Tuesday night at about 8:45, a guy would come in. A guy in Daisy Dukes and a sequined bikini top. He was balding, had a beer gut, and chest hair. He would strut his stuff to the counter and order 2 sprinkle donuts. Every Tuesday. Honestly, I aspire to that level of confidence. Used to work 3rd shift overnight in a Texaco 20 years ago. One night, this guy in a bright yellow Mustang comes in to buy gas and beer. I run his credit card, and the register flags it for being stolen. So I tell the guy, your car won't work. Says I have to keep it. So the guy kind of freaks out, leaves his beer, then hops in his car and speeds off. I call the cops because he already pumped his gas and left without paying for it. So later, I walk home at 6 a.m. I lived only a 5-minute walk away. As I'm walking, I see the yellow Mustang parked at an apartment complex across from the street from my house. So I go back to work and call the cops again, explaining that I know where the guy lives. Presumably, after that they found him and arrested him or whatever. A few days later, I had to do a friend a favor and take her to visit her boyfriend, who was in jail at the time. On our way out of the jail, some guy walks up to her to bum a cigarette off of her. It was the guy with the yellow Mustang. I sped up to walk ahead of them, so hopefully he wouldn't recognize my face. She gives him a cigarette, and he proceeds to complain about how he got arrested because he found a credit card, so of course he was going to buy some gas and beer with it. He didn't recognize me, so I remain unmurdered.
People who are the reason for certain rules. What is your story? Former co-workers of mine. Contracted employees have a maximum amount of time that they can work each week. Company pushed a lot of 60-plus-year-old employees into retirement via a benefits change. A bunch of those who retired re-signed on as contracted hourly workers and started making more money than they had before they retired. Checking ID at work when we have parties that contain alcohol used to be an honor system until a newly hired person under 21 drank too much and vomited in the hallway. Screw the honor system, my liver needs alcohol. Hey, you're ruining it for the rest of us! They banned doing handstands at my primary school because we used to play the game where you'd sing a song and go up into a handstand, and when I went up, for some reason, my arm just gave way and I landed on my shoulder and broke my collarbone. I saw my old teacher a few weeks ago, and apparently that's the handstand story equivalent of the boy who swung back on his chair and cracked his head open. Oh god, that reminds me of how in primary school I used to swing back and forth on my chair until one day one of my best friends at the time actually cracked his head open on the corner of a table behind him, and he left a big old pool of blood there. It was awful. There was also a guy who slipped on a banana peel, legitimately slipped on a freaking banana peel and fell down stone steps, and they had to get paramedics in or something. When I was going into 6th grade, my family was moving to a new town. In order to prevent myself and my brother from having to go through the hassle of moving and to alleviate some of their stress, my parents decided to send us to sleepaway camp for 6 weeks. My brother, 2 years older, proceeded to get extremely sick within the first week or so that we were at camp. He was on bed rest, and at more than one point, the staff had to bring him into the small town nearby to go to the hospital. My mother had a tendency to overreact and make mountains over molehills. She was extremely unhappy with the staff and thought it was outrageous that my brother got that sick that quickly, assuming that someone must have showed up to camp on the first day knowing they were sick and spread the germ to my brother. Luckily, he recovered after the first week and was able to enjoy the rest of the summer. When the term was over, we left camp excited to see our new house and meet the people at our new school. Fast forward to the next summer, our parents saw how much we enjoyed camp and decided that having us out of the house for a month wasn't so bad for themselves either. Instead of driving us this summer, they decided to send us on the buses the camp ran to different counties and states. The total ride was about 4 hours, an eternity for a middle schooler with a surplus of energy. Once we arrived at the camp, the buses all line up and there's an in-process tent set up hub where all the kids had to walk through before they could get their bags and go to their cabins. It was taking forever. I started to get irritated. I had waited all year for this, now I have to wait more. I finally get off the bus and into the tent and see what they're doing. Each camper is getting asked a series of questions about their current health. Are they feeling sick? Do they have any allergies? Do they have any prescriptions, etc.? They would then get their temperature taken by the nurse to confirm they did not have a fever and were sent with a counselor to their cabin. I got to the end of the line and asked the nurse why they're doing all of this, because it is taking so long and I was being an impatient child. Her response: parent was very upset last summer that their camper got sick, so now we are screening everyone and quarantining them if they show any signs of symptoms of being ill. I look at my brother, who is standing behind me, and yelled, "Thanks a lot!" In 3rd grade, I jumped off a very tall piece of playground equipment, smacked my chin on my knee, and bit my tongue. It was a bloodbath, and the teacher passed out and hit her head off of the pavement, resulting in another bloodbath. Well, the next morning, there was an announcement stating no more jumping off the tower on the playground. The next day, the teacher's son tried jumping off of a rope swing over the schoolyard fence and broke both of his arms. The school removed all of the fun stuff off the playground that summer. I can only imagine they were probably the most hated people on the playground for a little while after that. At my school, it was a rule to not act like a ninja. When I was young, I got interested in Naruto, so I started acting like a ninja. 3 people saw me and started acting like ninjas as well. The teacher noticed, so she told us to stop. We stopped for the day, but the next day we did it again. Our teacher was getting annoyed, so she gave us a bad star, a red star that meant you were bad. At the end of the week, you had to take the bad star home for your parents to see. We got mad at the teacher, so when she wasn't looking, one of the ninjas stood up and walked slowly. He plopped the red stars from each of the ninjas' star sheets. Teacher noticed and had enough. She sent us to the principal's office. He was laughing but told us to stop. Next day, there was a rule: don't act like ninjas. Bunch of goddamn uppity ninjas. So at my high school, there was a rule that was added my junior year and is even in bold in the student parent handbook. This rule was that students are not allowed off campus during the 10-minute passing period at all. The reason that this rule exists is that my sophomore year, I was really craving a Starbucks during my first period, so in the last few minutes of the period, I mobile ordered a coffee and then during break ran half a mile to pick up my coffee and walk back. I made it back to my class on time, but the school still tried to get me in trouble until I said, "Show me where it says I can't leave campus during the passing period in the handbook and I will accept any punishment. Otherwise, you have no grounds to punish me." And after 20 minutes of sitting in the office, I got out with no punishment. Then my junior year, that rule was added to the handbook. To this day, it's one of my best, worst accomplishments. I'm just waiting for that person to be like, "I'm the reason that they locked Newgrounds or Miniclip or Armored Games from the school computers." I moved from the Midwest to Texas to attend college. It was the first time I tasted deep-fried okra. The cafeteria was all you could eat. The okra was like sniff to me, and I ate plateful after plateful. Pretty soon, the rule was 2 servings per meal. I got Beyblades banned in 4th grade, circa like 2002. My mom had cheaped out and bought me an off-brand Beyblade that was heavier and I think made out of metal or something dense. Anyways, we had this one kid who would bring in like the Battle Dome or whatever they had. My Beyblade would collide with theirs and theirs would just go flying out of the dome at unsuspecting victims. Picking up speed, running out of time, going head to head. It's a way of life, you gotta fall down, eat ground to get back up again. Let's Beyblade! I adored Beyblade as a kid. The anime, the Beyblades themselves, they were so cool. I thought it was the best fad to come out at that time in schools and stuff. Yeah, there was the hazards and everything, but it was cooler than frickin' Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I have fallen so frickin' far off from. I don't even know what's going on in that anymore. I also remember Battle Beat-A-Man, which I really liked and I even bought, but like no one gave a crap about Battle Beat-A-Man. Does anyone even frickin' remember Battle Beat-A-Man? Back in the day on Neopets, there was this rule that you couldn't make posts titled things like Girls Only Party, but the rule was never enforced. So one day when I was 12, and on my mother's Neopets account since I was too young to use the Neo boards, I made one of these boards, and everything was fine for the first 10 to 15 pages. Everyone was staying within the rules on the rule-breaking post, so TNT, the Neopets team, basically the mods and developers and stuff, left us alone. And then someone decided to RP going swimming, which was kind of risky and I warned against it. Shortly thereafter, someone made a post that was pretty similar to the following. "Oh, okay. Gets out of water, bikini falls off. Oops. The board was instantly deleted. My mother's account was permanently frozen, and from that day forward, when someone used the word bikini on the Neo boards, a filter changed the word to cardigan. When I worked at Whole Foods in the prepared food section, I used to make myself a burrito for dinner. I would load that mother as full with beans, rice, and meat as possible. I usually ended up with something that was about the size of a fat baby's arm. Yeah, that all came to a stop when one of the storage managers saw me making my own burrito. After that, we would get written up if they caught us making our own food like burritos and whatnot. My freshman year of college, I made it so that no one in not just my dorm, but all dorms on campus were allowed to use the microwave located in each of the dorm's common area after 10 p.m. because drunk but me went to microwave a Hot Pocket one night, and instead of setting the timer to 3 minutes, I set it to 30, which wouldn't have been a problem if I stayed there waiting for it, but drunk but me decided at that moment, hey, you know what would be even better than being drunk? Being drunk and high, and proceeded to go back to my room for a bong hit, which turned into several, which turned into me nearly passing out, roused only by the now blaring fire alarm that made everyone else in the dorm to also have to go outside in the middle of the goddamn night. And of course, due to the whole where there's smoke, there's fire rule, a couple of fire trucks showed up to the action. Me and everyone else that I lived in this dorm with were all standing outside grumbling about what butthole caused this, some speculating that someone was stupid enough to have pulled a false alarm. At a certain point amongst that grumbling did it dawn on me that I just left that Hot Pocket in the microwave, and that's when I started worrying that the sort of all this 3 a.m. hubbub could have been me, a deep, abiding shame that was validated when I saw one of the firefighters emerge from the dorm with a charred microwave. I joined in the chorus of incredulousness from the other cohabitants of my dorm who were shouting pleas of what drunken, dumb butt burn up the microwave, and whoever did this is gonna get their butt beat, and similar witticisms. I figured at this point lying was my only way out, and in the end it worked. No one that night ever found out it was me who burned up the microwave in my drunken and stoned state of dishevelment, and was the source of the no microwaves after 10 rule in the dorms that was enforced for the rest of the time I was in school, and could still be in place for all I know. My fourth high school now has a rule that teachers have to actually check in with the office before allowing a student into your class, even if you know them. My mom gave up on me going to high school because she didn't graduate, and neither did my grandma. No one on my dad's side graduated either, pulled me out of school. I moved across the state and started going to my old school again, and the teachers didn't check in on if I was supposed to be there. I still hated going to classes, but needed the testing so I could get credits, so I would ask my friends who had the same classes to tell me when their tests were, and would sit in the cafeteria for both lunch sections. It took them a few months to figure it out. Our gym where we had prep rallies was a level lower than most of the school, so there was an elevator so disabled people could get there. A few of my buddies and I would take the elevator back up with one of my best friends who was in a wheelchair because we would sit with him during the rallies and walk back to class with him and chat in the elevator. One day, an assistant principal saw us get out with him and lost his mind because he thought we were using the elevator being lazy. They put up a sign next week saying to leave the elevator for people who need it. My buddy who was in the wheelchair and his dad sent several angry emails about it because it essentially segregated him from his friends. They took the sign down pretty soon after that. I guess that counts, but it was very brief enforcement of a rule. Don't know if this counts, but a guy in my school was the reason for the boys' bathroom being locked in between breaks because they poured washing powder and detergent down the toilet, then flushing, causing a foam party. If anyone needed the bathroom, we had to go to the office and fill out a form and then get a key. It lasted about 2 weeks until the teachers and most of our senior students kicked up a fit about it because it was taking about 10 minutes out of your class time if you needed to go, rather than the 2 minutes it used to take. Plus, the girls' bathroom was still open, so it became an equality issue and they got unlocked again. While working at McDonald's when I was younger, I thought it would be cool to make a quesadilla with what was in the kitchen. It turned out really well, but my manager ratted me to the GM, and the next day there was a sign in the kitchen stating that only items on the menu were to be made by cooks. When I was a freshman in college, I brewed beer in my dorm room. I got caught and written up, but it was before I added the yeast, so my defense was that I did not have alcohol in the dorm, and was just landing to bring the mixture to a 21-year-old friend off campus prior to adding the yeast. It was a private university and they called bullcrap, but the penalty was just a slap on the wrist and they changed the residency code to specifically prohibit fermenting yeast. That's not a bad defense, to be honest, but it obviously didn't work, and at least the punishment was, like they said, just a slap on the wrist. I wasn't the reason for the rule, but I was the one who implemented it. I was the network admin at a middle school back when mice balls was still a thing. Some of the kids were regularly stealing the balls out of the mice and taking them with them, so we'd have to replace the mice out of our meager spares. Because of that, I implemented the policy that all mice were to be turned upside down at the end of class, and the teacher was to walk around and visually inspect each mouse to ensure the ball was still in place. Ended the problem right there. During my junior year, my physics teacher did the mousetrap car assignment and held a competition to see who could make a mousetrap car go the farthest and fastest. I spent the whole night before making it. The next day, I did a test run right before the testing, and my rear axle snapped in half, basically ensuring that my mousetrap car was not going to move. Anyway, the teacher assigned 50 points for having your mousetrap car there and 50 points if it moved. He gave each student at least 3 attempts to get his mousetrap car to move. Everyone in my class got theirs to move, and I knew mine was basically fricked. We were doing these runs in the hallways, and I was so glad that no one came out to see how mine will do. When it came to my turn, I set up my mousetrap car and let it go. The car was barely moving, and I was losing my mind due to how fricked I thought it was. My teacher had to come closer, get on his knees, and see that the car is actually slowly moving. Confused students came out due to my celebration and howling only to see the mousetrap car at my knees. I got full credits for that assignment. The physics teacher did the assignment again my senior year, and I saw that he changed it so that your mousetrap car had to go at least 1 foot to get those points. Maybe there were other students that were reasons for it, but as of my knowledge, the teacher had me in mind. I went to a Catholic school that had a strict uniform policy. I'm the oldest of 4. This will be important later. For Halloween, seniors are allowed to dress up while the underclassmen wear uniforms. Well, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 12th grade and always wore a uniform. My senior year, I came into school on Halloween with a shirt and jeans on. When asked what I was, I replied, a public school student. Next year, my brother was a senior, and when the list of unacceptable costumes came up, public school student was on it. My youngest brother graduated in 2016, and it's still on the handout. So back in the day, there was an electronics store known as Circuit City. The attire was pretty simple: red polo shirt, black or khaki pants, and black shoes. Around this time, Heelys became popular, and I decided that I needed a pair of those loafers. I got mine in black and wore them shift after shift, scooting around the store and messing with customers as I silently glided between aisles and snuck up behind them. On my last day, I may have decided to have a few beers before work and figured I would put in a few hours, get my check and bail. I also may have decided that running in said Heelys to chase after a soon-to-be former co-worker was a fantastic idea, and subsequently tripped, which resulted in me flying into a yellow concrete pole. This resulted in me hitting the pole with the palm of my hand, think Superman, but more idiotic and with poor posture, and breaking my arm. After getting a fancy cast, I filed workers' compensation because, why the heck not? After getting approved, since there was nothing defining whether or not the black shoes were supposed to be wheel-free, Circuit City promptly amended the handbook and stated that flat black bottomed shoes were the only acceptable kind. A year later, they went under, and I still have my Heelys. Even as an adult, I still catch myself being slightly jealous of kids with Heelys, because I'm like, I'm too old to wear Heelys, but I guess not. But also, I wish I had Heelys when I was a kid. Uni rolled out monthly internet traffic quotas because several students reportedly downloaded what at the time in history were inordinately excessive amounts of data. This was almost 20 years ago. My group of friends knew some people who worked in the uni's IT management department, so a few days after that was announced, we go by their office to head off for movie night, and I noticed a sheet of paper with a list of student numbers and associated traffic volumes posted on the team billboard. My student number is sitting right at the very top. The reason why it called my attention, comfortably sporting over 5 gigabytes of traffic, 5 times and 10 times the amount for the second and third students on the list. This was during the time where private cable internet had access to 640 kilobytes and institutions like universities had T1 connections, 1.5-ish megabytes. I asked what that was. Oh, That is why we're rolling out monthly internet quotas. That's the list of top 30 students who downloaded the most data, and next to them is how much they downloaded last month alone. Why do you ask? Do you know who some of these people are? I told them I didn't know about any of the others, but the one at the top was mine. The look on their faces was a mix of fascination and shock. And for the rest of the night, I had to listen to them ask me several times how I managed to do that consistently for the last few months. A bit of background. Uni IT, being unable to guarantee that computers would be clean enough in the long run, had to put in place an OS image download that all computers would grab and reset themselves to. Imagine Windows 10 disk restore functionality, but in the late 90s and early 2000s. During a lot of project nights, labs were open 24/7 to students. We would end up eventually losing focus, which would quickly turn into playtime. Usually something like Q3 or Freelancer, as the computers were always tabula rasa on reboot. We were always asked to shut them down, and they themselves would do so if not logged into after a while. We ended up having to install it all again. We had enough disk copies. This was also the time I quite literally downloaded all that Game Hippo had to offer to try on campus computers, as well as repeat downloads of Stepmania, DDR, Beatmania for PC freeware, tons of songs, and the real clincher, accompanying high-quality videos that would play during gameplay. So yeah, I basically did it on repeat downloads. The funny thing about it is that when the limit came into play, students had to basically authenticate themselves with the Uni proxy via basic authentication on browser. Every time someone expired their quota, the system would simply prompt you for authentication again, and thus my friends and I started using the account pool notion. You ran out of allowance? Here, use my account. Whole different can of worms. My senior year of high school, 2004, the powers that be decided we had to work on a year-long project of our choice. At the end of the year, we had to give a presentation on our project. The rules given to us for appropriate attire clearly stated students must wear either a dress, skirt, or a tie and collared shirt with slacks. Being a girl who really hated dresses and skirts, I decided to be smart and wear a tie, collared shirt, and slacks. Nobody argued with me, but the next year the rule stated boys wear a tie and slacks and girls wear skirts or dresses. Yes, it was sexist. No, I wasn't protesting the sexism, I just wanted to wear pants all day for a 15-minute presentation. Nothing wrong with that if you ask me. So I've got two stories for this. One is in 6th grade and the other is in 9th grade. When I was in 6th grade, we used to shoot paper at our teacher with those little rubber band hair ties, whatever bracelet things. After a few months, the principal got tired of hearing the teachers complain that the kids were shooting paper at them. We did it in class, at recess, at lunch, on the bus, wherever we could. That Christmas, my mom bought me a big box of that stuff, so I showed up to school with the bag full of it and sold it to the kids. They got caught every time but never ratted me out. I just kept bringing it in and let them shoot it. We got in so much trouble for it now they will suspend anyone for just having a rubber band. When I was in 9th grade, we had a prep rally assemble and the Spirit Week theme for that day was class colors. My grade decorated our entire building with glitter all over the floor and walls, tables, chairs, desks, it was everywhere. 2 years later, they're still trying to clean it up. They banned glitter for the entire school. Nobody is allowed to use it because a few cheerleaders and student council went insane. I walked out of my second hour and it looked like a unicorn threw up.
911 operators. What is that one call that you can never forget? Many of these stories will be sad and graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. Harley motorcycle tipped over and the clutch lever went into a 4-year-old's eye. Parent was on the line asking what to do. Suddenly, she said, "They're going to lift the motorcycle." I emphatically told her to tell them to stop and wait for rescue and EMS. Rescue ended up cutting off the clutch lever and transporting the kid to the hospital. She underwent surgery. That was 1982. Just last year, I met the lead rescue officer and the girl herself, now fully grown. They wanted to meet the 911 operator that saved her vision. I'm a dispatcher for a cab company. One day, I got a call from an old man who seemed as if his voice was trembling. I'm naturally polite, as I asked for his drop-off address. He said, the emergency room. I casually said, "Feeling a little under the weather, eh?" And he responded, "I tried to take my life. I vomited most of the pills up, and now I feel miserable. Can you send a cab quick?" "Certainly, sir. Anything else I can do for you?" I talked to him for 15 minutes before the cab pulled up and the driver carried him out to his car. He told me his life story and why he tried to end it. I visited him in the hospital as soon as my shift was over. He still calls for a cab every day to take him to a barbecue restaurant. I had a call that started out pretty dumb but was actually pretty serious. 911, where's your emergency? 123 Main Street. Okay, what's going on there? I'd like to order a pizza for delivery. Oh great, another prank call. Ma'am, you've reached 911. Yeah, I know. Can I have a large with half pepperoni, half mushroom and peppers? I'm sorry, you know you've called 911, right? Yeah, do you know how long it'll be? Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency? Yes, I do. And you can't talk about it because there's someone in the room with you? Moment of realization. Yes, that's correct. Do you know how long it'll be? I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house? No. Can you stay on the phone with me? Nope. See you soon. Thanks. As we dispatch the call, I check the history at the address and see there are multiple previous domestic violence calls. The officer arrives and finds a couple. Female was kind of banged up, and the boyfriend was drunk. Officer arrests him after she explains that the boyfriend had been beating her for a while. I thought she was pretty clever to use that trick. Definitely one of the most memorable calls. I'm not a 911 operator, but I spent time doing OnStar/telematics type stuff, and the moments you remember are those when you're still connected to the vehicle once the dispatch has been made after an accident. I've heard a brother beg for his other brother not to die as he bled out. Not sure if he actually did. The one that has stuck with me the most is the one I initially heard the least on. Airbag signal connected to a vehicle. I heard a sigh and then silence outside. Nothing but the sounds of passing traffic. A coworker then completes the dispatch, standard procedure, and I attempt to make a contact a time or two with no luck. It's simply a matter of remaining on the line to listen to make sure the ambulance gets there. Then, a car stops, and I hear talking in the background. Soon after, someone else stops. Finally, someone starts the last rites type of prayer after asking someone to join hands. I realize then that what I heard at the very beginning of the call was their last breath. The only time that this person's entire existence crossed mine was at the last possible moment, and they don't even know it. Life is fickle. Be good to everyone. I was a 911 dispatcher for several years, and one of my most memorable calls was a hysterical woman at about midnight one stormy night. She was absolutely incomprehensible. I kept saying, ma'am, you have to calm down. I can't understand you. Ma'am. This went on for what felt like forever. I couldn't get anything useful out of her. My officers were en route to this obviously horrifying situation. Finally, she said something about being with her sister. How old is your sister? 1. Instantly suspicious, I asked, how old are you? 5. A 5-year-old boy. So that's how I inadvertently called a little boy ma'am many times. Oops. The storm had woken him up and his parents were gone. They went out to move their cars to shelter in case of hail. He was just very scared. My officers still responded and talked to the parents about not leaving sleeping children alone, but everybody was unscathed. It wasn't my most tragic call, but it is one I've never forgotten. Poor little ma'am. Just a reminder that if you like what you're hearing, remember to subscribe to Am I the Genius and Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching. My first call I ever had to dispatch on the radio. 2 homeless dudes blowing each other on the bus. I'm sorry it's not serious or traumatic, but it'll always stay with me. I used to work as a relay operator, 711, and often got misdialed 911 calls. We would connect them to 911, but since they connected through us, we had to stay on the line. One time, I got an old woman who fell out of bed and couldn't get up. I connected her to 911, and from there they tracked her location. The 911 operator is like, ma'am, are you in such and such hospital? Are you calling from a hospital? Yes, I fell and no one will help me. Not sure what the 911 operator did, but about 10 minutes later, you hear someone come into her room to help her up. Apparently, this woman fell out of her hospital bed and no one noticed for over an hour until she dragged herself to the phone and called 911. I was like, note to self, never go to this hospital. 911 dispatcher here. I took a call once of a house being on fire, so of course, we send the fire department out. Soon as they arrive on the scene, they ask for the police to respond. Police don't typically respond to this area with the fire department. Turns out the story was that a girl's fiancé arrives home and dumps gas on her and lights her on fire. She then runs to the shower to try to put herself out. He follows her, turns the shower off, dumps more gas on her, and lights her back on fire. She then runs through the house, thereby lighting the house on fire. She then runs out of the house as the fire department arrives on scene. So when FD pulled up, they had arrived to a body collapsed in the yard on fire. When PD arrives, the male fiancé walks out of the burning house, lets himself into the back of a police car, and says, "Take me to jail." My mom was a 911 dispatcher for over 30 years. She had many crazy calls, but one story she told me always stuck out from the rest. One day, a man called in. With a calm voice, he told my mom he was in a local hotel and that he had doused himself with gasoline and was going to end his life. He called in so they could evacuate the hotel because, quote, I don't want to hurt anyone else. While my mom is trying to talk him out of it, she is on another line to the hotel letting them know what's going on and to get everyone out. While emergency services are en route, she has to stay on the line whenever possible to keep people calm, reassure them help is on the way, and to try her best to keep track of what's up on the other end. As soon as the guy heard the sirens coming in the distance, he asked her if everyone had been evacuated yet. She tried to stall her answer, thinking he'd light himself up as soon as she said yes. Didn't work. Seconds later, she stated hearing the worst screams she's ever heard, and she's heard many during that job over the years, and the phone went static, and then silence. He died in that hotel and Mom had to listen. Lousy day. I wasn't a 911 operator, but a supervisor for AT&T's 00 info directory information. Think 411. While remotely listening in on some agents one evening, one particular call was escalated to Tier 2 for assistance. On the other end of the line was a woman who was hysterical, saying her husband was trying to kill her. Protocol dictates that we trace the number to the local LEC, local exchange carrier, and notify law enforcement in that area. We do this, but we had no way to connect the call to the local sheriff dispatch. Silly, I know, but we technically weren't true operators, and our equipment didn't support that functionality. Basically, we had to act as a relay between the LEO and the victim on the phone. By this time, I had moved from my office to seat myself next to the Tier 2 agent to help her keep her cool while everything was going down. The agent, let's call her April, because that was her name, was handling the call very well at first, but started to lose her mind as the call progressed. While listening in on the call next to April and trying to convey what is going on to the LEO at the other line, we heard the woman who initially called in say, "He went to get an axe. Ma'am, where are you now? I'm locked in the bathroom. Please hurry." The sheriff's office is on their way. They say they are 5 minutes out. Then, we hear loud banging on the door. Her husband was trying to chop his way through the door with the axe. April lost it when she heard the woman start screaming, knowing her husband was coming after her with an axe. She threw her headset off and walked away, saying something like, "I can't do it, Lucky Inc. I can't." April heads off to the ladies' room to collect herself. So I pick up the headset to reassure the lady on the phone. "Ma'am, the sheriff is at your house now. Where is your husband?" "Back bathroom. He's at the door." More loud banging from the axe. By this time, the woman was overly hysterical and crying madly. Then, "Sheriff's Department, drop the axe." "Sheriff's Department, drop the axe." Pop, 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 pop. The local LEO dispatch directed me to ask the lady to open the bathroom door, and she does. The next voice I heard on her phone was a sheriff deputy. All he said was this: "The situation is under control, operator. Disengage the call." I still get chills and all teary thinking about it. Hi guys, I actually am a 911 operator. First ever 911 I answered was about a naked man sitting in a bathtub on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. He was drunk, and we still don't know where he got the tub. Edit, West Tennessee, since everyone keeps asking. The one that stayed with me gave childbirth instructions to a deaf father via relay for his deaf wife. They were the victims of a home invasion and were tied to chairs. Burglars saw her in labor, panicked, then left. Took Dad hours to free himself and call. While giving the instructions, I obtained a suspect description to put out to surrounding agencies. They were caught in the city to our north during the call. Baby boy was born perfectly healthy. I worked in a call center a few years ago, not for 911, but for general purchases for car parts. Anyway, some guy phones me asking for a car part, find the part number, and place the order as I would normally do. I then hear him sigh and begin to cry. Naturally, I ask if everything is okay, and his response is, "You don't want to listen to my problems, mate." Me being a kind guy who wanted to get rid of some of his shift, I said, "Sure, what's up?" and ended up having so many feels. Turns out his wife had motor neuron disease and had very recently passed away, and he was fixing up her car to sell it on. He said it got to the stage where she couldn't walk, then couldn't speak, couldn't do basic tasks such as dress herself or shower, etc. Eventually, she didn't even recognize his face, and the disease ultimately took her. He then tells me about how he has to move house as he can't stand to be in the property without his wife anymore, and that he had 80,000 pounds worth of pills in a drawer that he had nothing to do with. He said he'll probably donate them to charity. Anyway, after about a 50-minute conversation with him, he was so glad that he asked for the company address. Now, I was new on the job, so I didn't realize the dangers of disclosing this information, but I gave it to him, and that Christmas, I received a card from him saying thanks for taking the time to listen to him, and that it really helped him get through a tough time just speaking to someone about it. So yeah, He was such a nice guy, and I'll remember him for the rest of my days because he really made an impact on me with the story. TLDR, guy orders car parts, cries, I proceed to have so many feels. Edit, oh my goodness, first gold, thank you so much. I honestly never expected such a great response. Edit 2, relearning about motor neuron disease and having so many flashbacks of the guy's explanation as to what it does exactly, etc. Wouldn't wish this upon your worst enemy. Edit 3, I'd like to thank everyone for all the nice comments and PMs I'm receiving. Also, the hourly rate for the car part therapist has increased from free to £150 per hour. I'm actually a police call taker. Throwaway because it's about time I made one and because confidentiality. But sorry, the reason you're not getting many real answers is because we can't talk about much. Got a call just yesterday on the non-emergency line from a very old, very proud German-Canadian man who just babbled on for 5 minutes straight about having come to Canada before World War II in a boat with windows and helped build Canada and loved Harper and he built skyscrapers and was a plumber and blah 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 and would not be interrupted. I just sat back on mute and laughed my butt off. When I finally went to kick him off the line, he finished with, "Long live AmITheA! Long live Canada! I love everybody! I love this place!" Yes, I know my accent is bad. Before my grandma died, we had to call 911 to get her to the hospital. An older lady, for some reason still an EMT, or first responder, I forgot, came to the house. She had trouble getting up all the stairs to the front door and fell backwards. She thought she hit her head, so she touched it and saw blood all over her palm. In reality, she just scraped her hands, but thought the blood was from her head, so she fainted. We had to call another ambulance. So, as a med student, I worked as an emergency phone operator for night shifts. One unusually quiet night, I had a call at about 3 a.m. A nice old lady was asking for just somebody to talk to because she had insomnia and just woke up from a terrible nightmare. Now, usually I was angry when something like this happened, people calling in the middle of the night for some BS that clearly isn't a medical emergency, but this old woman was so sweet and polite that I decided to just have a nice talk with her. Also, all the other lines were quiet at the time. She told me her name and that ever since her husband was sent to a nursing home several weeks ago, she was afraid that something terrible might happen to him. About 1 hour ago, she awoke and just felt that something bad had happened, and now she felt so anxious and alone at home, just wanted to hear a human voice, someone to talk to. She kept excusing herself for calling in the middle of the night and wasting my time. And then I got a call on the second line. It was the nursing home where her husband was sent. "Yo, we got a dead here. Died 1 hour ago. Send over the doctor for a death certificate." Needless to say, the man who just died had the same last name as the nice lady I had been talking to. I am a 911 operator. My favorite call I personally took that I won't forget is about a couple at McDonald's. They had just purchased a new vehicle and went out to celebrate the purchase at a local McDonald's. The wife, for some reason, decided she had better check the spare tire and make sure they had one before they left town, and found a gun instead. I received a call from the wife stating she just accidentally shot her husband. When I was asking about exit wounds, she said it did not penetrate but burned him real badly. Turns out, wife shot the husband with a flare gun when she went to show it to him. They did not finish their Big Macs, and I'm not sure how that marriage ended up. He wasn't a happy man on the way to the emergency room to get burn treatment. Former Sheriff's Department dispatcher in charge of non-emergency and 911 calls for a rural southern county. I picked up the job part-time and was in the process of training. My supervisor was sitting next to me listening to my end of the call, but she was not hooked into the line to hear the whole call. Line rings, I answer. It's 911. A young girl, less than 10 years old, is telling me that she, her mother, and her baby sibling are locked in a bedroom. Her uncle is pacing around outside the door holding a knife and threatening to kill them all. She does not know the house number/fire number where they are, and mom is basically checked out of the conversation out of fear. I have a vague idea of where she is, so I send deputies in her direction with the promise that I will get better directions. As is typical in rural areas, everybody owned a scanner and listened like it was their job. My phone starts ringing off the hook, so I am reassuring this little girl on one headset and holding a second headset up to my other ear taking directions from concerned members of the public. Directions like, go until you see a broke down truck, keep going. When you get to the second broke down truck, turn right and continue until you see a large rock. It was also late enough in the evening that everything was dark out. The little girl tells me there might be a back door that is unlocked. Members of the public who know the house just from the general location and number/gender of occupants are calling in confirming that there is a back door that my deputy should enter through and that they will not be seen by the perpetrator if he has retreated to the living room. My guys arrive, sneak in the back, walk right up to the guy sitting in a recliner, disarm him, and arrest him. Family gets emergency protective orders so he, ideally, cannot be a threat to them again. I almost quit after that call because my adrenaline was running. I was shaking, and I'd had to handle it mostly myself because my supervisor couldn't hear what was going on. I stayed with it, and it was one of the best jobs I had. I quit when I moved to another state, but it was a sad decision to make. Edit, I would like to add that the whole not being able to find your house in the country thing was extremely common back then, and I cannot speak to current systems in rural areas. I also got extensive public help via scanner listeners the time a home security company called to report a possible break-in or medical emergency, but they only had a billing address on file, no directions to the house whatsoever. If you have any kind of company servicing your home, make sure they have your actual street address/fire number and a backup detailed set of directions to your home, including landmarks. I don't want to ever see anyone in an easily preventable emergency because ADP doesn't have the details necessary to send someone to your home. Allow me to offer a funny story in place of these serious ones. I was an intern at a local police department and I was working with dispatch for the day. We received a call from a concerned citizen complaint. 911, what is your emergency? I'm sorry, ma'am, could you please speak up? I said there's two guys screwing in a parked truck. Yes, ma'am. We'll get someone out there immediately. The operator hung up and we both immediately started laughing. He had the caller on speaker so I could listen. I asked him if he was going to send someone out there, and he just shrugged and told me sometimes people need some fun. Edit, my newest, most upvoted comment is about butt stuff. Nice. Edit 2, I should talk about butt stuff more often on Reddit. Edit 3, gold for talking about butt stuff. Reddit, I love you so very much. And thank you, most kind and generous stranger. I have much love for you as well. Not an actual 911 call, but I did get a 911 call while working at a tattoo shop. A customer calls me, gives me his address, tells me to not ask questions, come over, don't knock, but rather break a window and come on in. What I find is him and his girlfriend were on the bed doggy style. I say, whoa, I don't mind the show, but I'm not sure if I want to join. Turns out they had gotten their piercings caught. The bar at the base of his had gotten caught in her hoop. Not a 911 operator, but Grandma was a telephone operator back in the day when operators actually connected calls. First call ever on first day on the job. Kid zipped his junk in a zipper. She said she could hear the kids screaming in the background. So, she put it through to the fire department because, quote, I figured they were all guys there, so they know what to do.
Zookeepers. What animals do you most enjoy taking care of, and which are the worst? I did a behind-the-scenes article on a zoo once and spent time with zookeepers and vets. A really chilled conversation trust in Jersey, Channel Islands. The lemurs were not kept in cages because they needed space to roam from tree to tree. The zoo figured out that they had their area that was home, but they were free to leave any time they wanted. There was nothing to stop them wandering off. They didn't leave. They were happy there, apart from the father of the group who would, about once a month, decide he needed a break from the family and head over about 400 yards down the road to the pub. They would get a call from the pub saying that the furry little guy is hanging out in their garden again. Most of the time, he'd just wander back. People and animals truly are more alike than we think. It sounds like a regular English dad wandering down to the pub to take a break. My sister is a zookeeper. We asked her and her keeper friends which animal they would least like to be trapped in a room with. They all immediately, unanimously agreed on one animal, chimp. As one keeper put it, if a lion gets out of a cage, I would run and help the public and other keepers. If a chimp got out of its cage, I would run to my car and drive away. I did animal control for almost a decade. Wasn't afraid of nothing, except chimps. I became a scared little girl when we got a loose chimp call. I don't blame anyone for being afraid of chimps. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard that recently there's been sightings that chimps use, like, sharpened sticks now. Yeah, I'd be scared too. I worked at a museum that kept a large turkey vulture tethered to a perch in the center center of an animal room. Children would tease this poor bird mercilessly despite the many signs and warnings. The bird sat in stoic silence. But almost once a day, at the perfect moment, he would hop down as one of the little chumps walked off, and he'd grab them with his huge bill just above the belt line by their pasty, fat, little French fry-infused love handles, clamp down hard, and then snap it back. Imagine someone grabbing you by the soft parts with a pair of channel lock pliers. Their scream and the nasty welt was always the same. By the time parents, teachers, and staff arrived, he would always be back on the perch, just staring still stoic. Best part of that job. I fed one of the sloths while volunteering behind the scenes at a zoo for a service organization, and it fell asleep halfway through chewing a pear slice. Then it woke up a minute later and finished it. It was definitely a cute animal. I volunteer weekly at a rescue center for birds of prey. I avoid the bald eagles unless absolutely necessary, even our resident birds, which are non-releasable and some of whom have been in our care for their entire lives, are the worst. They are scared of everything and very finicky. We spent 6 weeks last summer adjusting one to a cart. It wasn't just when it rolled by. He couldn't stand any of the new carts just sitting there across from him. We used a grant to update supplies, including 8 new great collapsible rolling carts. We use them a lot, especially when we take birds off site. Apparently, a bird thinks your product is a rolling death machine, and that is sadly not a suitable reason to return something. Other things bald eagles hate: water horses being carried or unraveled, the sound of rakes on gravel, buckets up until 5 gallons, those are fine, plastic bags, unfolding newspapers, shoelaces, key rings with 6 to 15 keys under and over seems to be okay. Birds I love. Peregrine falcons are straight up baller. Maybe we just have some amazing ones, but damn if these guys aren't the greatest. Nothing spooks them, not overly aggressive, and tolerate a lot, especially during camp season. Also incredibly smart. They learn routines very well and seem to be very perceptive. We try and train all resident birds for their safety and for our own. For example, most of our animals have to go to a specific perch and display a desired set of behavior, equivalent to sitting quietly before we drop food off. By far, these guys are the fastest to pick this up and other behaviors usually, and the best at complying. Barn owls. We don't get too many and only have 2 resident birds, but I love these guys. Very quiet and pretty tidy compared to others who destroy everything. Bald eagle. Here's a bonus. Cheetahs are the most disgusting of all the big cats. They destroy everything in their enclosures and will sit and roll around in their own mess. Zebras are douchebags. I have actually also heard that zebras have really awful attitudes. I work at a safari park and we have a bat cave. They're all Egyptian fruit bats in there, and for the most part they're perfectly fine around humans, bar a little anxious if I try to get too close to them while they're sleeping. One bat, however, is a right pain in my butt. His name is Clayton, and he's constantly hanging on the exit, which means I have to get him off it so people can leave safely. Unlike all his fellow bats, he doesn't fly away the moment I get too close to him. Instead, I have to literally poke him until he does go away. Yesterday, he was chilling in his usual spot by the exit while eating a piece of pear. I poke him to get off and move as usual, and the little poo squeaks at me, which is bat for sod off. Frickin' Clayton, man. I'm a zookeeper in Colorado. It's hard to pick favorites because I really enjoy working with so many species, but I'll tell you about a few. African black-footed penguins are adorable and all have their own personalities, so they're really fun to work with. Most of the unpaired females are also very affectionate towards their keepers, and it's always the best when they follow you around and flirt. North American river otters are also one of my favorites. They're cute, smart, and really interactive. They play with most of the things we give them and recognize us when we call or are standing outside the exhibit. One of our older females will swim next to you at the exhibit glass and follow and chase you if you move around. Some bears are hilarious and also really smart. They like to climb around and will figure out where food is no matter where you put it. Every morning, I walk up to their holding and greet our male by blowing gently in his face. That's how they say hello. Ring-tailed lemurs have great personalities and have the added bonus of being adorable. They will also follow you around and sit next to you when we're weeding their exhibit. When I have treats, they will hold your finger and ask nicely to get one. We had one young male who had no concern for personal space and would hold my shoulder, tapping on my arm and trying to pry open my hand for treats if I was sitting down. They also make the cutest noises of any animals ever, in my opinion, and they are always cuddling with each other. I can't really think of any animals I hate taking care of, but if I have to choose, squirrel monkeys are really gross. They poop everywhere, propping walls, ceilings, and super grabby. I've had my hair pulled a few times, but luckily they're small enough to not cause the kind of damage an ape or larger primate could. They're still fun animals though, and I'm happy to work with them. I worked at a marine rehabilitation center in Costa Rica for a year. The sharks were cool dudes. Worst they would do is grab the feeder stick and not let go, which makes it really hard to keep feeding them, but you can't really negotiate with them. The caiman were alright, but I never did find a way to hang the meat piñatas that didn't break the rope or break the tree branches over the enclosure, which was frustrating to me and the caiman. The sloths are not bad, but they can move very fast if you make them angry. Those claws will open you up something fierce, like down to the bone. It didn't happen to me, but I watched it happen to another employee. The males will fight each other given the chance, and holding and touching them is so very uncomfortable because they are literally just flesh bags of skin and bone. But the sea turtles were the biggest jerks you could ever imagine. Let me share some stories with you. Our turtles were lazy, spoiled pricks. You had to drop the food directly into their mouths and try to avoid getting bitten, or else they would let it fall to the bottom of the tank, at which point you had to walk back into the building and get a net to scoop the food and try to feed them again. They would not die for it. We had one turtle in a 90,000-gallon tank. You could imagine it would need to be cleaned, and the only way to do it was with a snorkel. Our turtle, Mario Fernando, would swim up and bite my butt for fun while I was cleaning the tank. This species of turtle have beaks, and a bite to the butt hurts like a mother. Plus, it required medical attention from the town doctor that laughed like crazy and took pictures of my turtle-chewed butt for his friends and Facebook. No, Costa Rica does not abide by IDOWorkHereLady laws. So I would have to attempt to clean the glass on the tank and always watch for that little prick to be sure he wasn't anywhere near me. He would also float and play dead all the time to lure me into checking on him, then, you guessed it, bite my butt. But the worst turtle we had was Shenanda. Shenanda lived in a big round tank outside that would get filthy. They are filthy creatures. The tank had a big PCV drain in the bottom that stuck up about 3 inches higher than the bottom of the tank, and the only way to clean the tank was to drain all the water out and then use a push broom to shove the gunk and poop down the drain. Shenanda thought the tank cleaning day was her day to get revenge for everything that had ever gone wrong in her life thanks to humans. So the first time I got told to clean her tank, my co-workers hand me thigh-high plastic waders and the broom and show me how to begin draining the tank, then head to lunch. I set all this in motion, and when the water is low enough, I hop into the below-ground tank with Shenanda, but I notice she is swimming around the drain a lot. Whatever, I let her do her and start scrubbing the tank's walls. Eventually, the water gets low enough that it is almost falling below the drain when I hear a suction noise. Shenanda has allowed herself to be suctioned to the top of the PVC drain, and she is giving me the stink eye and flapping her flippers like she's upset that she's stuck. So now I am standing in ankle-deep turtle poop in plastic boots in the Costa Rica sun, sweating to death and trying to figure out how to safely, without getting bit, move a 150-pound plus snapping sea turtle off this drain so I can finish cleaning her tank. Everyone that could help me move her is at lunch. I am pretty much alone in the park except for the admin and office people, and no way are they climbing in to help me. Worst of all, I realized I had forgotten my ladder, so I couldn't even get myself out of the tank to get help and find shade or do something about the situation. You might be thinking this is a one-off thing, but it wasn't. Shenanda would suction her butt to the drain every single time I cleaned that tank for the year I worked there. She knew exactly what she was doing. Also, birds of prey smells terrible, like musty death. Well, I kinda don't blame Shenanda for feeling that way when you gave her that name, and it basically is close enough to shenanigans. Welcome to Shenanda's Shenanigans! Not a keeper, but I was an intern at the zoo for several years. Some of my favorite animals to work with were the polar bears, the rhino, and the big cats. The bears and cats were just staggeringly awesome. Big, beautiful creatures I'd only seen in movies and pictures before, not 15 feet from me. It always took my breath away to be that close and care for those sorts of animals. The rhino was just a big old goofy guy. He played fetch, he ran up to you for treats and scratches, and honestly was pretty similar to a dog. That rhino could always put a smile on my face. Least favorite? The birds and greater apes. The birds were mean, loud, and smelly. I have scars on my knee from penguin bites because I wasn't feeding them fast enough. They just crap everywhere, and you get to scrub it off the rocks for hours. I know that it's part of the deal with being an intern, but it made me pretty much hate those birds. The greater apes, aside from the orangutans, just scared me. They're smart, stronger than us, but lack the compassion and humanity we have, and you know it when you work with them. If there was ever an animal I was truly afraid of, it was the chimps. I flat out refused to work with the mandrills after the first day. That being said, the chimps bonded incredibly well with their actual keepers, and more than once came to keepers for comfort. At one point, our male chimp got out, was stuck in a tree, and his keeper went out and held hands with him while leading him back to the enclosure. That poor man had to take 2 weeks to mourn when that chimp passed away a few years ago. They were really close. Volunteered at a zoo for a few years. The giraffes were the easiest cleanup, except for rainy days. The lemurs were sweet and you could feed them by hand, either by putting food in their faces or in their little hands. The barnyard animals were fine, although the sheep would walk uphill from me and boo at me like Welsh nightclub goers. The camels were chill. No, they don't spit. The ones there never spit. I was told that when you beat them or terrorize them, they will vomit on you, and that's what's called spit. These guys never had a bad day. The worst was an elephant with PTSD. She tried to murder several keepers and would throw rocks at them while I observed her and her crew. I'd hold a clipboard and do observation. The chimps were the most dysfunctional family I'd ever seen, and I grew up in Mafia, Brooklyn. They had a bobcat who spent his days napping. I liked him and noticed the keeper had no problem going in the cage and tidying up around his sleeping form. He'd get up for chow and to play with some toys and then go back to sleep. Not a zookeeper, but when I was in high school, the seagulls would attack people during lunch. Our school was like a small college campus. They would fly by in the hundreds from the middle school a few miles away because we were disgusting and left trash everywhere. They knew when our lunch period was and came every day. At first, we tolerated them, and they would generally avoid people, but then they weren't afraid of us anymore, and were more of a cleanup crew. After a year of this, they began to harass people for food, so we fought back, swinging our sweaters and backpacks at them. No one ever got one. And for some time, there was this sort of Cold War where the birds would just watch us eat and surround the schools, but would never come down until everyone was back in class. Human and bird relations were finally broken when they carpet-bombed the entire school, Pearl Harbor style. Feces rained down on people as they ran for what little cover there was. My friends and I watched in horror from one of the few places that had cover as people became peppered with white shot. The bathrooms were jammed with people lining up to clean themselves, while others left entirely. We didn't go outside for weeks until the horde moved on. Didn't really fit the criteria, but it was funny nonetheless, I can give it that. A wallaby named Wallace is my favorite animal in the world. Don't tell my girlfriend, but I like him more than our dog. He likes only me out of the 4 of 5 handlers he encounters. The birds are the worst. They've become aggressive with the staff since a particularly combative bird joined the big exhibit area. It's like they've learned that the other keepers and I pose zero threat. I got a few scrapes trying to get away from some flamingos a couple days ago. It's frowned upon to fight back against the animals, even if it's only restraining an attack. I've heard stories of keepers getting fired for doing so. I actually had to omit some of that stuff because this person was just talking about things that, just was not necessary, like things with his girlfriend. It's like, where's this coming from? I just want to hear more about Wallace the Wallaby. Not a zookeeper, but I once helped take care of elephants at a summer camp in Florida. We made toys for them, which mostly included giant leaf balls covered in peanut butter and assorted nuts and fruit. Watch elephants scramble around it, frantically licking the ball as it rolled around in the dirt, was quite an experience and had to be one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Love those big beasts. I interned at a zoo last summer as a vet tech and a keeper. I was able to work with the kangaroos, wolves, coyotes, eagles, Andean condors, as well as the farm and education animals. One afternoon, another intern and I went to go clean and feed the condors' enclosure. These birds are like 3-foot-tall vultures with a decent-sized wingspan. In order for us to go in, we need to get the male into his indoor enclosure because he can get aggressive. However, the female is quite tame. This task alone can be hit or miss, depending on how he feels. He is pretty smart, so we have to open it up and sit on the other side, enticing him with some raw meat or fish while calling him in. He will slowly walk in front of the indoor enclosure, eyeing us and the meat. Some days he will perch on a big rock that's sitting directly in front of the indoor enclosure, knowing there is food there, but still ignoring us. Luckily, this particular day he decides to come in and we close him off. Then we head in to clean the outside exhibit, grabbing our tools and trays of meat. As we're finishing up, the female condor decides to accompany us to the door. While we're exiting, she then finds my co-worker's phone in her back pocket to be very interesting. She then latches onto the back pocket, and I start to grab a rake to try and sway her off my co-worker. All the while, my co-worker is starting to freak out a bit, slightly trying to get away with this condor attached to her back pocket. The condor does let go soon afterwards, and we laugh it off once the adrenaline wears off a bit. I'm not a fan of the reptiles or cockroaches that I had to feed, and the small mammals weren't my favorite, but I like the ferrets, and the 15 goats we had pooped a lot. I used to work at a safari park in Scotland. Generally, most animals were sound. I quite enjoyed this one little feared beast called an Anoa. They are basically big dog-sized cows and live in pairs. This one had a bad reputation because it was seen as mean. However, the poor thing never did anything bad to me, and I liked spending time with it. I even snuck it in a few apples from time to time. It was separated from all other animals because one day it had gone under a camel and stabbed it repeatedly in the belly with his horns. So they tranquilized the Anoa and his partner to move them, but she died, and so he was alone. Poor wee dude. Worst overall was Chippy the chimp, who was a complete bellend and went out of his way to show it to everyone. He would eat the other chimp's favorite foods, even though he didn't even like them. Bit of a wee prick, our friend Chippy. Most feared animals in the park, though, were the otters. Sweetest little chirps when they're hungry, but clever, fast, and bitey as heck. I have never jumped so high as when I was in their enclosure, giving them things to play with when the food ran out to distract them. And they realized I was in there with them, and they came bolting after me. Must have cleared 6 feet. I did a 6-month work experience in a small zoo in the UK. The best animal to look after was a big tegu called Reggie. Watching him eat dead rats was morbidly fascinating. The worst animal to feed were the Humboldt penguins. The greedy little sods would bite my shins every frickin' day. I'd come home with a ring of purple bruises just below my knee. If you do happen to love penguins and are near Edinburgh Zoo, anytime you can see, take a march around the park at lunchtime. I think one of them is a member of the Norwegian army for some reason. He has a little medal for his flipper. It's adorable. Damn, this was 7 years ago, so I can't really confidently say whether or not that's still there, because I'm like, yeah, I'll go to Edinburgh Zoo to see a little medal on a penguin. That sounds cool. I worked at a large pet store that had many exotic pets and was kind of like going to the zoo, minus the lions, tigers, bears, etc. I worked in the reptile room and definitely had my favorites. Pretty much all of the lizards, except lecker geckos, were chill. The little snakes we had were rude. It was a gamble of if you were going to get bit whenever you had to stick your hand in there. It didn't hurt, but was annoying. The gopher snakes and tree boa you also had to watch carefully. On the other hand, the pythons and sand boas were docile. A large caiman iguana bit half of my thumbnail off, which was really disappointing because I was the only one that would go in her room and spend time with her. Sometimes the things we love hurt us the most. Honestly, I love working with all of them. Sloths are definitely one of my favorites as far as hands-on goes. I love working with big cats and grizzly bears because they have a lot of character. Big cats are seriously just house cats, but bigger. Penguins are fun to work with, but they are the worst to clean up after. They eat fish all day, which makes their poop acidic and smelly. It gets everywhere and destroys the paint on the floor. A donkey once bit my fish at a mall petting zoo. I still like donkeys, though. They're cool. True words were never said. Obligatory, not a zookeeper, but my answer for both are horses. I was a ranch hand for 2 years in college and discovered you could tell a horse's personality and intelligence by how they kept their stall. Dirty and disgusting stall typically means the horse is a butthole and doesn't respond well to direction. We also housed other horses, and if you're wondering, ponies all have a Napoleonic complex and are douchebags. Also, I can never eat A1 steak sauce again because of that job. TLDR, don't be a ranch hand, kids.
Today, my mom slipped on ice and broke her ankle. The person whose house she fell in front of came out and yelled at us when I came to help, saying I wasn't her son and how dare I use his driveway. Reddit, what moments have you had where you just thought, what is wrong with you? Title pretty much says it all. My mom slipped and it looks like her ankle is broken. I got there to help, pulled my car into his driveway to back it up next to her on the street, and he came out and yelled at us. My mom told him that I'm her son and she called me to help, and he just kept yelling about how he saw us from his roof and wondering what I was doing using his driveway. After that, we just decided to ignore him since we had bigger problems to deal with. But in my mind, I was thinking, why does it matter who I am or why I pulled into your driveway? You can see her on the ground, you can see her screaming in pain. Does it really matter right now? What is wrong with you? Any interesting stories from Reddit about people being just downright idiots about things that don't matter? I was in the car with my grandma on a large 4-lane road in town. A car next to us sideswiped us, pretty hard actually, so we pulled over to do the whole information exchange thing. The woman in the other car leaps out and starts screaming at my grandma, saying, "You are the rudest person I've ever seen. You wouldn't let me over. I had my blinker on." I was completely taken aback. My grandma is the sweetest old lady, and had either of us actually seen her blinker, I know Graham would have let her over. But there was heavy traffic, and her car was directly beside us. I dealt with the beast in the Camry and got her insurance. She ended by saying, "This isn't my fault. That woman should let people over." I laughed, which took her aback. I said, "You're 100% at fault here. And by the way, a blinker is not a yield sign even if we had seen it. Learn how to drive before you hurt or kill someone." Then we left. I was pretty happy when Graham told me her insurance had accepted liability, and the agent told her something to the effect of, quote, "Yes, she yells at us too." Pretty minor compared to a lot of these, but back when I was 13 or so, my cousin and I were at a small town Mardi Gras parade. We found a convenient spot and stood there waiting for the parade to start. About 30 seconds later, a man tapped my cousin on the shoulder and started cussing her and me out big time for, quote, being in his way, freaking kids, no respect these days, raised by TV and single moms, etc. I turned around and saw an empty folding chair about 30 feet from the roadway, presumably his. Yes, people do set out folding chairs to watch parades, but they usually set them up about 5 feet away from the road, not 30. Yes, we were standing in his way, but that's like yelling at someone for skipping you in the grocery line when you're standing in the produce section. Be there or don't. And as simple, "I was here to watch the parade and you're standing in front of me. Could you please find somewhere else?" would have worked. He didn't have to automatically go to "freaking kids with no respect." Out of spite, he got to stare at the backs of our heads for the next half hour instead of the parade. We caught lots of beads. I used to work in a record store, and during one of our busy moments of the day, a coworker started to have a seizure up at the cash registers. I immediately stopped ringing up a customer to go help my coworker and try to figure out what to do. About 2 minutes into helping my coworker, whom everyone could see was needing help, a customer asks if we could hurry up and check them out. I remarked that I'm sorry I was busy helping someone that was having a seizure and they'd have to wait a couple minutes. Of course, the customer gives me an angry, frustrated look and starts back-talking. After I get the situation taken care of, I go to check the customer out, and all they were trying to buy was a CD for 25 cents. Upon the customer leaving, they remarked that they would never come back because of the slow service. Good riddance. That always cracked me up, where Karens or Kevins are yelling at customer service, and they leave saying, "You just lost a customer." Yeah? And? There are thousands more. You're not paying my bills. I don't care. When I was 21, I got my first big kid job, so I decided to buy myself a new, used, car since my clunker was awful. I got a beautiful Pontiac G6. I loved it. Exactly 3 weeks after I bought it, I had to go back to the dealership to sign some paperwork so I could lower my car payment. My mom came with me. I was driving back home, going about 35 miles per hour, minding my own business, and this old man in a Chevy Avalanche, about 80 years old, pulled out of a parking lot right in front of me. Had he floored it, I would have barely missed him if I slammed on my brakes. However, he stopped to make sure nobody was coming from the other direction. I slam on my brakes, blare my horn, then T-bone his truck. The front end of my car was barely there, fluids leaking all over, airbags all in my face. My mom and I both got hurt, and this jerkwad decides to get out of his truck and start screaming at me, asking me why I hit his car, what is wrong with me, etc. I looked like I was all of 16 at the time, so I'm sure he thought he was right in his old brain of his. He kept physically coming toward me, swearing at me, screaming, even when the cop came. Finally, after 10 minutes of screaming, he asked if we were okay, to which my mother went off on him, that we weren't okay and he had no right being on the road. Come to find out, he hadn't had a valid license for a few years. Seriously though, how did he think that I hit him on purpose? I once had a guy tell me that he wasn't subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk linked in the description below, and I was like, what is wrong with people? But seriously, if you like what you're hearing, give us a like and a subscribe. My gran fell on the curb in front of my house when she was getting out of the car and broke her hip. She was lying on the ground crying when she said a stranger passed. My gran asked her to just knock on her front door, and the person just stared at her and kept walking, and my gran waited an hour until my dad came out and found her. What kind of person just stares at a little 80-year-old woman crying on the ground? Screw that person. I once parked my car on the street, completely legally, when visiting a friend. Some guy comes running out of the house yelling at me, saying that was his parking spot. He had a large driveway that could easily park 6 cars, but here he is, yelling at me for parking on the street I was completely and totally, morally and legally entitled to park on. I pointed to the street sign saying it was okay to park, and he yelled, "I don't care what the sign says, you idiot! Move your car or you'll regret it!" I ignored his threat and went to visit my friend. It was a late night, and I came out at about 3 a.m. to drive home, only discovered that someone, wonder who, had let the air out of all my tires. Luckily for me, I own an air compressor, so I hooked it up to my car's cigarette lighter and pumped the air back into my tires. For reference, this post was made 11 years ago, back when more than 2 cars on the road had cigarette lighters. It was cold out and not the greatest compressor in the world, so it was a miserable 20 minutes or so. Once I was done, I returned the favor, letting the air out of all of the tires in the 4 cars in his driveway, as well as his boat trailer. I also superglued his mailbox closed. That made me feel better. I worked at a small, food stand-like place once in Disney World. We closed at 3 every day after lunch, and were right next to another food place that remained open. Well, this day, a man came up to our window at around 3:30. We had already closed everything, and demanded food. I told him nicely that all of our kitchen had been closed, but there's a similar restaurant, literally like 15 yards away, that served the same items. Well, he freaked out, started screaming and complaining about the service in front of his children and a bunch of other kids. He even called one of my coworkers a moron. I know he was fully aware of Disney's policies to never let anyone go unsatisfied. Maybe he'd get free stuff, right? Well, he did. Food and drinks. As he was given his food that came from the neighboring kitchen, I remember I gave him the most "what is wrong with you" look I had ever given, even in risk of losing my job for not looking, quote, Disney happy when around a guest. The part that tipped me off most is that he acted like that in front of his children and was rewarded. He didn't even say thank you. I was managing a restaurant on a busy weekend when the tornado sirens went off and the radio told everyone to take cover immediately. My hosts ran to take cover and call their kids at home. Some jerkwad customer decides to start yelling at me to seat him immediately, that was ridiculous, he didn't need to take cover. A tornado did hit, about a mile away. I was on the bus to a shopping mall and it was very crowded. Upon arriving, people massed for the doors, and when following behind the torrent of people, in my own pace, I suddenly see an old, 70 to 80 years, woman silently frantic, standing in the middle of the massing crowd trying to get the attention of someone, with tears streaming down her face. Everyone in the entire bus just went by her, some pushing, others commenting, but all ignoring. I ask her what's wrong, and she points to the front of the bus where I see a pair of legs sticking out below the bus, in front of the front wheel. I can't pull him out. It's my husband, she cries. Apparently, her very old husband was hit in the head by the mirror of the bus as the couple was waiting to get in, and he was unconscious and bleeding. The bus driver hadn't even noticed anything, so while I checked up on the husband, the bus driver closed the doors and initiated to pull out into traffic. I had to slam the glass really hard to get his attention, and if it wasn't for traffic blocking the road, he would have pulled out regardless, thinking I was just a disgruntled, late, would-be passenger. What sickens me about this experience is that some people are so busy with their own little lives that they are willing to ignore the tears of a crying old helpless lady practically brushing up against them because it might mean that her obvious discomfort might require excessive burdening aid from them that just doesn't fit the planned schedule. What is wrong with some people? Update due to interest. The man was, as far as I know, alright after I had pulled him out as gently as I could and provided basic care. I don't know the term in English, but I put him into a position I learned from first aid courses. He had taken a huge gash in the head, but when the paramedics arrived, they said that I did the right thing and will take care of him now. The paramedics' calmness was either incredibly professional and disconnected or just experienced, but I felt at ease afterwards. Never heard from them. For a while, I worked at a gas station, and most of the time I had to sit in a small building and just watch what went on outside. I was doing a bit of paperwork one day when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. One customer was waving frantically to me, the pump hose in one hand with no nozzle and gas spraying everywhere. I slammed the emergency stop button and alarms started going off everywhere. I ran outside with the absorption powder to try to get this massive spill under control, and at the same time, I was trying to explain to the people that were coming up to me why the pumps weren't working. At this point, I was a bit unconcerned with customer service. My number one priority was to get this dangerous spill under control. The guy who broke the nozzle felt it was a good time to come up to me and tell me, quote, "I need a refund for all that gas." You know, I understood that because the gasoline was shooting out onto the ground instead of his tank. He would eventually need his money back. But while the gasoline is still on the ground and I'm desperately trying to clean it up so that nobody gets hurt, that is not the right time to demand a refund. Fortunately, my manager came out. He had to call the fire department and tell them not to come, and he dealt with this guy and all the people that he felt the need to tell me that they were, quote, "in a hurry and when would the pumps come back on." Every year there's a Greek festival here in Richmond, Virginia, and all the people in the neighborhoods around there get a little angry about it because of all the people parking. But some people take it farther and actually put out obstructions, like chairs with orange tape between them or cones, to block people from parking in front of their house. The problem with this is that it's public parking, so they're really just being crybabies, which is why I like to find some house close to the festival that's done this. I get out of my car, throw the cones into the person's yard, and park right there. Screw them. I'm only going to be at the festival for as long as it takes to get food because it's usually hot as heck. One time some guy came out screaming at me about how I was breaking the law and he was going to call the cops and have me arrested and my car towed. I just looked at him and said, "No, you won't, because I haven't broken any laws." So I got my food all boxed up and I'm walking back to my ride enjoying the heck out of one of the 5 gyros I bought. One for now, one for later, one for later, one for my ex-wife, and one for her later. And I see a cop car blocking me in and the cop standing on the sidewalk with the jerkwad berating him. Cop had a very tolerant expression on his face, so I just walked up and said, "Hey dude, sorry, officer. I got all my food and I'm ready to head out. I've got the family waiting for dinner," holding up the bags. "Any way you can move the cruiser a few feet and I could be on my way? Or are you going to be busy for a while yet?" The jerkwad's eyes widen and he starts jabbering about how I'm the one and telling the cop to arrest me now, impound my car, on and on. Cop looks at me, gives me a slight nod, and says, "Nope, I'm pretty much done here." "How are the lines?" I'm kinda hungry, and the guys back at the station love gyros. So I told him the lines are moving pretty fast and the tzatziki was extra tangy this year. The jerkwad is just gaping at us, so the cop says, "Sir, if you don't take care of this trash by the time I'm done moving my cruiser, I'll have to cite you for littering. And don't block off the street again," and goes to move his cruiser. By the time I'm loading up and pulling out, with the wave to officer cool as heck, the jerkwad is dutifully picking up his cones and orange tape with a stunned expression on his face, like reality just came crashing down. TLDR, jerkwad tried to block off a parking spot. I took it anyway. He called cops. Cop was cool as heck. Told him to pick up the cones or be cited for littering. I left enjoying my victory gyro and loving life. I was standing at a crosswalk of a fairly busy street one day, next to a woman gabbing on a cell phone, and her little 3 to 4-year-old son toddling around. The woman wasn't making any attempt to look at the kid and wasn't holding his hand. The kid, probably bored by waiting, toddled right past me, jumped off the curb, and started walking into the street. As soon as I saw him leaping off the curb, I instinctively shouted, "Oh no," sprang into action, and ran for him. I managed to grab him by the back of the shirt and yank him back to the curb before the SUV whizzed by at 40 to 50 miles an hour. Obviously, they weren't paying attention either. The boy starts sobbing, of course, because what little kid wouldn't? It was scary. I spun around, and immediately, I met with his mom's face as she proceeds to flip out, screaming about how dare I touch her son and how dare I make him cry. I tried to argue and tell her that I just saved the kid's life when he walked out into the road, but even after hearing that, she just kept calling me nasty names and screaming at me. She may not have noticed me wrestling her toddler from a fate of being vaporized into a fine kitty paste, but given the circumstances, shouldn't she have at least given me the benefit of considering that I was telling the truth? She wouldn't stop screaming incoherent garbage at me, while still holding her phone near her face, mind you. Heaven forbid she'd end the call. So eventually, I just shouted back that she should keep a better eye on her son and walk to another crosswalk 2 blocks down. I wasn't expecting a grand hero's parade, but a simple, "thanks for not letting my boy become Kinder Jelly" would have been nice. Coincidentally, this was near where I lived, and I ended up seeing she and her boy again about 6 months later as they were walking through the neighborhood. She was still on her cell, but this time, the boy was trailing after on a leash. Lesson learned, I guess? TLDR, I saved a kid from being hit by an SUV. His mom gets angry at me. My friend got hit by a car at an intersection. The girl was speeding. After my friend literally flies over the car and lands on the pavement, the driver pulls over and starts to yell at my friend who got hit. She doesn't even take out her phone to call 911 or anything. She just goes on about how, "This is the second accident this month. Why weren't you looking? Do you know how much this will cost me?" I was thinking, what is wrong with you, lady? You just hit my friend with your car. Shut up. I especially love the part where she said that this was the second accident this month. I think that's a you problem at that point. Literally, so many accidents are preventable if you just look at the road. My mom has had close encounters with deer at least a dozen times, and she's even hit a couple. But she's aware of her surroundings. It's what prevented our car from being a deer paste factory. On my wife's 30th birthday, my mother sent her a happy birthday e-card in the morning. About an hour later, my wife finds out her grandmother had passed away. She, of course, wasn't in the best of moods after that, so decided to just be alone for a couple of hours. Meanwhile, my mother composed an email to my wife several pages long going on about how rude my wife was for not thanking her for the e-card and how she's always been ungrateful and uncaring towards her. My wife called her and calmly informed my mom of why she hadn't replied to her e-card the very instant she got it, and my mom decides to get angry at me for not calling her right away to tell her not to get angry at my wife. When my mom confronted me about it, I only said, "If you don't want to put your foot in your mouth, don't open it." When I was a kid, I whacked my elbow on a door handle. May have ruptured a bursa. Man, it hurt. I was maybe 9, and I was screaming in pain, tears running down my face, sobbing, the whole Steven Spielberg. One of my parents' lifelong friends grabbed, physically restrained, everybody who tried to comfort me, saying, "Oh, he's at his funny bone. He'll be laughing in a minute." It felt like forever, but I guess it was 5, maybe 10 minutes. I'm curled up in the fetal position, holding the elbow and screaming, and I still remember seeing her grab people's arms to pull them back when they reached towards me. Number 1. On that door handle, there was no way I could have hit my funny bone without warping the space-time continuum. Number 2, who the heck has ever laughed from a shot on that exposed nerve? Anyone? Number 3, how long can an allegedly normal human being listen to a child scream and not only decline to help, but actively stop others from helping? And no, the laughing part never happened. In related news, when I met her 10 years later, she was just as prolific a sour of sorrow as I had remembered. That woman never saw me sober as an adult. Every time she showed up, I checked out of reality until she was gone. I was out walking my dog because at the time she was cooped up a lot and I wanted to let her stretch her legs. We walked from our apartment complex to the neighborhood next door. My dog had already done her business and I, a responsible member of society, picked it up and threw it away. While walking past a house, a woman runs out and starts yelling about getting her gun. I thought for sure I had misunderstood her, so I said, "What?" This causes her to run back inside and bring a large man out with her. "What did you say to my wife?" he yelled. I told him calmly that she came out and yelled at me and I was trying to figure out why she was angry. She begins to scream about how my dog, this is the first time I'd ever walked in this neighborhood, was crapping in her yard and she was going to shoot me if she caught it happening. I assured her that I had never been by her house and I was the only one walking the dog. I pointed out that we weren't even slowing down near the house until she came out and threatened to shoot me. But reasoning with morons doesn't exactly work. So instead, she kept screaming and her giant husband seemed to be getting more agitated. So I just started walking again and avoided their house on the way back out of the neighborhood. That said, it did inspire a hobby. If my dog dropped a lot of poop, I'd pick it up like normal, put it in a plastic sack, and drive over to their house. If the lights were out and the cars were gone, I'd take the bag and empty it on the lawn, right where they'd likely step out of their car when they returned. I never saw it happen, but I always hoped it played out like I planned. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.